listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is May 4th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, I'm sounding more like me today.
Yeah, people won't have to check their settings on their podcast player or whatever when they load up the episode, so that's good. Glad that you're on the mend.
Yep.
And last week was it was kind of a weird show. We got into some really intense kind of topics, and I want to say thanks to everybody who chimed in various formats just to kind of, give us their 2 cents in the matter too. I feel like we are not on an island on this, and that a lot of people can kind of relate to the feelings that we were expressing about the puzzling cartel chip system last week. And this week we got a ton of news to talk about. Like in my brain I know it's like, okay, as soon as a patch is out, it's time to start PTRing up the next one. But for some reason this kind of took me by surprise. That it's like, okay, yeah, it's time to start talking about 11.1.7 already. Here we go. I mean, it's just the way it is. I
wasn't expecting a 45-minute video from Ian about what one particular design intention is going forward for the game to be something we got. I wasn't expecting all of the 11.1.7 talk that you're talking about coming in. I wasn't thinking about even more changes to the Galagio reward system / cartel chip stuff. I wasn't expecting all that stuff to happen this week. I thought there'd be like a slower week, and then we would, maybe start to get into stuff the week after that or something. But no, you're right. Like we're bang into it now, man. It's going.
The train is just barreling down the track, which is, it's cool. It's good. It's, I mean, most of the stuff that we're getting is good news. Even when we get some disappointing stuff, that, there's some kind of silver lining somewhere. So, but yeah, I mean, last week ended up being a huge show with a ton of stuff to talk about. We have just as much of that, more stuff to talk about this week. So just the state of WoW in 2025, I guess.
Certainly seems like it, that's for sure. All right, so let's kick off before we dive into what's going on this week, because there's a lot to talk about. Let's talk a little bit last week. So this past week in WoW, we got Mythic One-Armed Bandit down. So that's done, accomplished.
Nice.
Off the list. Started pulls on Muggsy to sort of check that out. I think Muggsy is another couple of weeks before we see Muggsy fall, which means I think I'm looking at like mid-June or early June for our finish of the Mythic raid tier, which I would be very excited for if we can accomplish, because that's a good amount of farm window of getting people mounts and relaxing and going down to one night a week and all that kind of stuff happening. Would be really nice to do for at least a month and a half. Would be really nice if we could have that time before we start digging into more stuff. So I'm excited about the schedule and the pace that we're going at. It's also been fun to keep track of where friends are at. So Death Jesters, my old alma mater, if you will, about Mythic Raiding, and when I first got back into Mythic Raiding, I was also with Ad Hoc and a few other teams since then. But they also got One-Armed Bandit down the night before we got One-Armed Bandit down. So it was kind of fun to be like, they raid Friday, Saturday, we raid Sunday, Monday. And so it was like, we're moving in lockstep, which was kind of neat to sort of see that happening.
One-Armed Bandit week.
I know.
It's time to kill One-Armed Bandit. Yeah.
It was a neat thing to check out. So that was fun. I also, in the Mythic Plus scene, have gotten my Resilient 13s done. So that is, I'm now halfway through 14s. I need 4 more 14s in time to be able to move that up to 14s. So we're just climbing the ladder. It really feels like it's like you unlock a rung and then, okay, this is our new base. We're going to 2-chest this key and get a 15. That'll give us 2 chances at getting a 14. And you just sort of keep working that way as you climb that ladder higher and higher. So I think I'm 3161 or something now, IO in the overall. And I've never pushed key stuff this far before, really, I don't think, with a regular group. So this is like the first time I've had like a group, which is a Warlock, Mage. I'm playing Boomkin with a Demon Hunter tank and a Holy Priest, and we're pushing keys. And it's been a lot of fun to sort of work our way through all these keys and work together to do that. And I will say the funniest thing to me is 12s now feel like 10s, which is interesting. And like even doing like a 13 is feeling closer to doing like a 10, because when you're running with that group of people, everyone just knows innately the things you're supposed to do. Oh, we need to line of sight this, and I got to drop vortex on this mob, and we got to CC that thing. It just sort of happens. You can have this kind of casual, relaxed, fun feeling when you're doing those keys, which is not something I expected to sort of feel. Plus, obviously our character power, I think, is higher now than we normally would see it at when we're doing this sort of keystone level content that we're doing. So it's been kind of a neat experience for me. I know it's unique in that obviously I'm pushing keys with a consistent group when I am doing that. And so that certainly helps a lot with us learning strategies together and, you know, essentially knowing one route and one idea of how we're going to do it, as opposed to queuing into something where, you know, 3 different people have done this 3 different ways and they're not sure which way they're going to do it. And until you're really in there and going at it, you're not sure. So that's been an interesting experience for that. I'm also back on Druid raid wise, healing, because I'm healing for Muggsy because we're 5 healing that. And I think I might end up healing for the last boss as well, because I think one of our healers might be out for that boss. They're expecting a child soon. And so I think their life is about to take a turn in a pretty dramatic way. And so they might miss out on the last boss prog, and I'm gonna have to heal for that. So we'll see what happens. But either way, I'm having a blast with the time that I'm spending in a WoW for sure. I've completely backed off of the majority of profession stuff. I've almost capped all of them, but even then, like the treasures thing I gave up a couple weeks ago with trying to get treasure stuff, because it just isn't worth the time effort to get the few knowledge points from that. So I just sort of grab the ones when I need them and I can get them. All my gathering professions were capped a while back, so I didn't have to worry about those. But when it came to things, I think leatherworking is one of the ones I'm still working on capping out, and I'm maybe 50 or 60 points off from capping that. So that's like, I'll just do stuff when I see it and it feels affordable on the vendor, as opposed to the crafting order vendor, when it makes sense to do, as opposed to trying to like spend 45 minutes to an hour just getting 2 knowledge points out of doing the chest knowledge stuff, which just wasn't worth it to me at all. So I think this worked out better. So I've been happy doing that. And that's kept me happy. I have seen all of the Children's Week stuff up and about and decorated, but I hadn't participated at all yet. So you're gonna have to speak to that for me.
Oh man, you better hurry up. You got like 24 hours left, basically.
I know.
Yeah, well, I'll just to piggyback off of that. The new Children's Week stuff is great. It's a quest line that you pick up in Dornegal, and the basic concept or like structure is there's like an orphan from one of each of the different like cultures that we've encountered in War Within. You start off with a kobold kid who is like a real chaos gremlin energy kind of kid, and basically you're taking each of the orphans to give them like their most fun day ever, right? So you go bring them to see something they want to see, or meet somebody they want to meet, or whatever. And so it's really cool. I mean, like if you're like reading all the dialogue and stuff your first time through, it's probably 15 minutes just kind of cruising around all the different zones and letting the dialogue trigger. And then you get your choice of a reward, and there's 3 new pets this year, and there's a couple different transmog items, and then also you can choose a token that lets you buy the Children's Week pets from previous years' events and expansions and stuff. So if you don't have any, you can do that, which is pretty cool. I thought the writing was great. I love the last couple like big Children's Week revamps, like new quest lines that they did. There's no real like recurring, log in and do this every day thing or whatever. There's like meta achievements around it if you never did those, but if you just want to check out the new stuff, it's a pretty simple process. It's all like right there in the spaces we're already inhabiting. So yeah, I really liked it. And I love the way that the Children's Week stories really make the world feel alive. It's like we're supposed to be these heroes and these champions of Azeroth and whatever. And it's like, if you're not fighting for that better tomorrow for the kids and for like the common people, like what is the point of any of it in a way, So I really like those kind of human moments that they put in through Children's Week, especially. I feel like the BFA one, I always mention that every year when it rolls around. Like I thought they did such a great job with the questing for BFA. And that was another expansion where we were introduced to a lot of like new people who were relatable, right? Like BFA, you're dealing with, Kultirans and Zandalari, and they're people like our characters, and their characters can really relate to more so than like in Shadowlands, for example, or even Dragonflight, where it was a much more, kind of ethereal thing, right? Like the inhabitants of the afterlife, the dragons are sort of these mystical creatures that are above sort of mortal standing in a lot of ways. So, this one brings it back to a bunch of more kind of relatable cultures, really. So yeah, I dug it. It may be over by the time you hear this episode, but if not, like if you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. Give it 15 minutes and just go hang out with the orphans. It was really fun. In terms of raid stuff, I do still have a raid night coming up tonight, but like all the big stuff is done for the week. Tuesday, we started up with heroic reclear, like skipping and reclearing. Decided to throw One Armed Bandit in there since you can kind of choose where you skip to, which is weird.
Sure.
But people want House of Cards, so we decided to go that route.
And best in slots, yeah, they're both really nice, yeah.
Yeah, so that was fine. I think we did actually have a house drop, so that justified the decision. Yeah, and then we went in, started up Mythic Tuesday, and we got we got Vexy pretty quick. We got Cauldron much quicker. That's starting to really, especially as we get the zone buffs, we get more power, just more practice. Like that's starting to be less of a time sink trying to get back through Mythic Cauldron. So we had some Rick pulls on Tuesday, not a whole lot of time, but we had some time, so it was going okay. Wednesday, I did manage to get 20 people who are like Mythic raid capable back in the group, so we could get pulls in. And we got them by, about 75 minutes after raid started. I think it was like about 8:45, and we killed them. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So that was really good. Yeah, thanks. That was team did a great job on that. It was about 40 pulls, which I really don't feel like was bad for that boss. It's just it was spread out over like 3 different reset weeks because we just been having issues with scheduling and can't get everybody together all at the same time.
Sure.
So. I think it went well. Really proud of the team on that one, especially just like I also have like a bunch of people who I think are not mega motivated to Mythic raid, right? So like they'll raid whatever, they're in for the group. So the group is doing this, they're along for the ride, but like they're not like I'm already kind of in a spot where I'm not planning on scheduling Mythic Prog nights for Sundays because I don't want to stress people out and I don't want to like push boundaries. You know what I mean? I want to keep raiding fun. And so I think that means Mythic Wednesdays. And if that means that, we don't get too much farther than this, fine. But I feel like Rick is a fight that's really going to speed up as we get more and more of the zone buffs and stuff because the easier you can blow up those ads and just get to safety. It'll be nice. So yeah, a really cool thing about Rick is like he's got some nice loot, which is now in everybody's pools for Vault. So that's good. As far as Mythic Plus goes, I actually have only done 7 keys so far this week. Normally I'd have about 12 done or so this season by the time we were recording, but only did 7. I'm sitting at exactly 2950 rating. So I'm getting close to that 3K. Did some 13s this week, but didn't happen to time any of them. Got to finish 12 plus 12 resilience for some friends. I actually have the key that my Demon Hunter buddy needs. So hopefully we'll get that done tonight for him. And I think that'll complete resilience for him. So once we kind of get all those done, then I think it's going to be trying to get some 13s and stuff and just get people to 3K.
Yep.
After that, I think we're probably done. Like I just want to get 3K and get the title or the achievement with the mount and all that. And just, okay, cool. Let's just chill and fill up vaults for the rest of the season. That's sort of the end of the road for me. I feel like, but 12s are feeling really good. I mean, I agree that they feel like 10s, and the way they kind of rebalanced it and redid the difficulty scaling, I think that's kind of where they were trying to end up. It was such a tough on ramp last season from 10 into 11, which is what, and then 11 into 12 was much harder. This season they kind of reconfigured all that, and the on ramp from 10 to 11 to 12 is pretty nice and smooth, and doing 12s, like we've been saying, I find it really fun. So I think this is the first week of this season that I haven't done a key that has an affix. We've just done all 12s and 13s all week, so that's a first for me, but I like it. I'm having a good time in there. Looking forward to getting some more done tonight and hopefully knocking out some stuff that the crew needs. And other than that, man, I'm staying on the Delves train, trying to finish up Monk and Druid gear, trying to get him into all heroic track stuff. Didn't end up taking. I might take the Druid or something. I might take an alt to finish up the heroic ID tonight, maybe. But I already did their Delves, so they have hero track Delves. Vault stuff from Delves. Druid's vault this week was 3 heroic trinkets. Thanks. Druid's just been kind of cursed, but even last season. But the Delves thing, it's starting to get a little bit tedious just because the time investment is long when you're doing multiple characters. Like I do my 311s and I get my bountiful map, so I get my 31 gildeds on both of those tunes, and then I drop them to 8s and I finish up vault on 8s. But it's just a big time investment, and I know I don't have to do bountifuls, but also the restriction around the 4 bountifuls being up a day is kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because it restricts how much you can get done on a tune if bountifuls are what you're trying to do, but also it kind of gives you like a stopping point. It's like a natural spot to go, okay, that's enough for today. So just trying to like mix and match, like, okay, it's almost the top of the hour. Let me grab the tune I haven't done Theater Troupe with yet, get my key. Yep. Then when that's done, I'll go to Undermine. I'll do like one thing for surge pricing. I'll get my second key. Can I get like 2 delves done before daily reset at 11 a.m.? And then I have 2 done on this tune. And then after rollover, I can do today's 4 on the other two. Like it's this whole sort of like priority system I have to manage for this. But, I mean, it's fun to play. I'm getting to the point where I kind of would like my monk to just be done, and then maybe cycle in the paladin or something. I will say, like, the paladin and now the DK are starting to really get geared up because of just doing a little bit of Nightfall. You get so much warbound loot from doing Nightfall, and you can get like veteran and champ gear pretty easily from that. And so, yeah, I mean, you can start getting 4 pieces knocked out and stuff for tunes that haven't even started playing in this content yet. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. Like, they improved the Nightfall quite a bit this week as well. If you're like a 1 tune or even like a 2 tune kind of player, Nightfall is probably not super interesting unless you love the MOG or you're just like a completionist with the rep or whatever. But if you have a tune you want to gear up or that you're leveling up and you're going to want to gear up, like, Nightfall is just that immediate, like, foot in the door. Here you go. Like, you can go start doing anything, right? You can start pushing delves. You can start doing low keys. You can start doing normal raid, whatever. You're good to go. You can even, and with as many catalyst charges as we've got now, you could even just get like a full 4 piece, like just from stuff that you pick up there. So it is. It's not my favorite content ever designed, but I have to admit it's pretty good at what it is. One thing I want to point out as we move into the discussion of what's coming up this weekly reset.
Yep.
Don't forget, like, this week is the last week before Turbo Boost starts. Next weekly reset is going to be uncapped crests, Warbound Valor Stones, the extra item level upgrades. The Puzzling Cartel chip number 1 is going to be next reset. So just plan accordingly this reset, right? If there's something you want to buy with your chip and it shows up in your vault and it's a choice between that and something else you want, probably get the something else, right? Like, start thinking about, like, you might want to soak out Valor Stones from a tune that needs to use them more than a tune that's always capped on them, because you can funnel them starting next week. Like, just if you're especially if you're managing multiple tunes, it's just a good week. Just bear it in mind. Like, this is our last week without that stuff coming in. So just a good week to just think about it, do some prep, have a little plan of like how you want to take advantage of it once it starts up.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would recommend people think about what they want to buy with their dinar, or their cartel chip, if you will, and what that is going to entail for their character, because we'll talk a little bit more about some of the Mythic Plus stuff they've added for trinkets for that later in the episode as well. But yeah, definitely when you're looking at vaults next week, and well, this week with the rollover that's happening on Tuesday the 6th, definitely look at, hey, these are items that are going to potentially be on a vendor. These are items that are not going to be on a vendor, because they're only putting rare loot, particular trinkets, particular weapons onto those vendors. So if for you, it's like, hey, I have a choice between tier shoulders or this trinket that I really want. You might take the tier shoulders in that situation as opposed to the trinket if you're just going to have to wait a week and then you just buy the trinket, maybe even on a higher difficulty than you're currently rating or have access to or was coming out of your vault in that situation, right? Depending on what content you're clearing. So certainly keep that in mind and just think about what might show up on that vendor when we actually comes around to it. Because I say might show up on that vendor because they're still adding things to the vendor. So like I don't know if in the next 48 hours they're going to add 4 more things, or in the next week that we have they're going to add 6 more things or whatever. Like I have no idea how that's all going to adjust. So for all I know, tier might end up on that vendor. I don't know why they put tier on that vendor. I think that would be a weird spend, but yeah, sure, who knows. I'd rather if they put all of the off tier pieces that you could then catalyze is what I would almost prefer, because then you get both transmogs. That's why I'm saying I'd rather they do that.
True.
So
plus you're gonna have that like increased chance to see set pieces anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like or because they show up like specifically in the vault. It's like you only get them from the catalyst. So
exactly.
That stuff has still been in flux. I hope there's still more changes coming. We do have some good changes that we will talk about in a bit. But there might be more. So just pay attention to the blue text this week and get ready for next. That's where I'm at. Just keep in mind, like next reset, we got a lot of changes coming in, and that may inform your decision making for this week's play and vaults and whatever else.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely keep that in mind. All right, but with that, let's hop into what's going on this week, because let's just get into talking about this. We got a huge show. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Delve bonus event, and I know these things just don't sync up well, do they? Last week was the Delve weekly.
No, they really don't.
This week is the Delve bonus event. So if you didn't do your Delves last week, good job. Way to see into the future as to what the next thing was by checking your calendar. Most likely it's in your calendar for your weekly events. Anyways, that's something that's going on right now. That means that there's the Sign of the Explorer buff up, where Delver's Journey progress gains increased by 25%. And companion experience gains have been increased by 25%, as well as you get 25% more undercoin from completing delves. And there's a quest to complete 5 delves, arbitrary number of delves, I find, which gets you a cache of 636 champion gear. So yeah, this is one of those things that is great early season. It's fun when it lines up with the actual delve weekly, which this kind of does, because it's within the 3-week window of the rotation of those things. So if you did not do your delves last week, you can hop into your delves this week, get yourself extra experience, get both quests done at the same time, and be kind of winning overall with that lineup of these two things. But yeah, if you're somebody who wants undercoin, this is just a really key week to get a bunch of undercoin. Is kind of the biggest bonus of this. I think the experience gain for Bran is nice, and if you're trying to like max Bran out, this certainly helps during this weekly window for sure. But the undercoin means you get all the cosmetic stuff, and there's a lot of cosmetic stuff to get from undercoin. So if that's something you're wanting to do and wanting to buy, that is a good bonus from doing delves this week.
Yeah, the quest to complete 5 is just weird because it doesn't line up with any other kind of rewards or quests or anything, really. And the reward is modest, I would say. Like, you can get champ gear from end of run if you're doing 8s, and I feel like 8s are pretty approachable. So, they might not be if you're, especially like I said, if you if you have a fresh tune, you're leveling up. We have the leveling event holiday going on right now. You're low gear. Maybe 8s are not comfortable yet, and so this gets you to a point where you can start doing them because you're getting an extra piece of champ gear. But yeah, it's very modest. I mean, Delver's Journey and Companion Experience is nice, but the people who are like going to be playing delves for this have probably already maxed all this stuff out by this point in the season. I know that I do more delves than the average player, but I've been maxed out on both of these things for weeks and weeks and weeks at this point. The undercoin is awesome though, because as you get up the Delver's Journey, you can buy keys, and then you can buy keys at a steep discount.
Yeah.
You could buy a wave scrambler, which lets you summon the underpin, so you can guarantee that you get your Delver's bounty map right away. So, those are good things to have Undercoin for, in addition to the cosmetics. Like, obviously, there's a whole slate of cosmetics on the vendor as well. So that's pretty exciting, because I'll probably be doing at least, 19 delves or something this week. So that a good chance to stock up on some Undercoin on those tunes. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the annoying thing is, if you're just not a delver and you're not about that life, like, this is where your spark fragment comes from for the week. So, or it could, I guess, but I don't know. I would say the other annoying thing, does the delve turbocharge thing part of that starts next week, right? So this is just like a week off from all that extra bonus that they're doing next reset. So the timing is the timing is a little unfortunate, because you're not double dipping. So, and I don't know.
So here's the golden timing. All right. The golden timing would, and I this could happen. This is possibility that next week, if you don't do any delves this week, you pick up the quest for this week, right? You pick up the delving quest for this week, because they don't go away this week. You don't get the bonus this week, which is unfortunate.
It will go away this week, because this is your weekly bonus.
So yeah, no, that this quest, forget the 636. This will go away, right?
Yeah.
So technically, yes, I guess this starting next week would have been ideal. The delves bonus event starting next week would have been ideal. But if you can have all three of the other weekly quests that are, or tri-weekly, I just call them tri-weekly quests, that's the easiest way to put it, then you could have potentially, because this week's choose one, so you could, if delves was one of the choose ones, you could have a choose one delves.
Oh, hopefully.
With the delves quest from last week for the delvers thing, with next week being get Titan disc fragments, with the boost that's happening next week, and suddenly it would be like, you'd have this, like, it is the ultimate delve overlap week, dip. Right? You would be quadruple dipping.
We would have quadrupled if this was next week.
Exactly, right? You would have quadruple dipped, which would have been crazy. But no, unfortunately, not everyone sees things that way when they're put into a calendar and told to repeat every X period of time.
I'm sure it was not a consideration. Not at all a consideration. But it would have been nice. Usually the choose one is like complete one delve, though. So like that does kind of line up nice with some of the other stuff.
It does, yeah. So this week being choose one, hopefully delves is one of the options. And what they typically do is like do 2 Nerubian delves, or do 1 of this specific delve, or that's what they tend to end up being. So we'll see what that ends up happening. But yeah, it could have been beautiful next week. It could have been beautiful. PvP Brawl for the week is Deep Wind Dunk. This is Deep Wind Gorge that they've sort of swapped into being called something called Dunk Ball, where you can race to claim balls at the map center and go to the northern and southern mines and try and score on the baskets on each other's nets with long range shots or dunks. So yeah, it's a crazy brawl. It's just a fun version of this battleground, and if that's something you want to check out, feel free to check it out for sure. That's a good option.
That's a fun mode. Yep. If you've never done it, especially, it's worth a look. I'm not really. It's been a while since I've really done any kind of PvP, even brawls. But if you've never done this, like, it is really fun. Plus, hey, it's NBA playoff time, so there you go. It's perfect timing with Deep Wind Dunk.
Yeah, and if you haven't killed the Godfather yet, be sure you're doing that every week, because you get that 642 eye level Warbound piece, which is big. So be sure that you're killing Godfather every week and getting those Warbound pieces, because they help out a lot towards helping out alts or even your main gearing up. So just be sure you're knocking that out. It's not so bad to do. This week, we hope, is Pulsar. We thought last week was going to be Pulsar. Last week wasn't Pulsar. That was weird. So apparently the rotation is still being
I don't know if it's
solved.
me or them or what. Like, I think I thought the rotation was something that it isn't, or the information that I'm getting is not great. It also gets confusing because I'm doing fewer and fewer Mythic Plus that have affixes, so I can't kind of remember. But yeah, if this current week that we're in right now, is recorded on Sunday, is the top of the rotation, because this is like week 9, right? And it's like an 8-week rotation. So this is the first rotation that we had currently, which is Ascendant Tyrannical, which means rotation number 2 should be Pulsar Fortified.
Should be, yes. Hopefully.
Should be.
We will find out. Anyways, yeah, so hopefully this week's Pulsar, that's when you get 3 orbs that spin around you in Mythic Plus, and you got to run to your other people's orbs and collect each other's orbs and pick those. I don't know why I said 3 orbs, but you get an orb, and it's 5 orbs because there's 5 people. And it's 1 orb spinning around each person. They have to run to someone else, and you each run to each other and touch each other's orbs, and then you're free to continue on with the rest of the dungeon, and you get a buff, and the buff is Mastery and Leech. So decent buff with that. Super easy to accomplish. The only bosses, as we said last week, that stand out are ones that are inside of Rookery, so just keep that in mind as a boss where people are spread out and separated, and it's kind of a pain to do. So just factor that in when you're looking at your week. I'm not going to dive too deep into Pulsar as we just did it last week again. So anyways, Children's Week is ending tomorrow. So obviously Monday, the 5th. So if you missed it, be sure you are putting it in your calendars for next year, because as Jason mentioned, there's new pets to grab, and you can always get old pets too, and there's some fun story stuff. So certainly worth checking out, and that is something that will be on my list for completing at some point today or before it ends tomorrow at some hour of the morning, and figure that out. So I'll be sure I get out there and check that out this year as well. Darkmoon Fair has. Oh, go ahead. You want?
Yeah, I
just
want.
Sure.
It does end a little bit after reset, which may not
Yeah.
help you depending on when you hear this, but maybe keep in mind, like, these holidays usually end like a couple hours after reset, which gives you, that little extra window, maybe if it's like a last minute thing. But
yeah.
to most of our pod listeners, probably not going to be helpful this time around. But it is that is how they do these things.
Yeah. Darkmoon Fair is now live. It kicked off today, and it's going to run until Saturday, the 10th of May. So be sure you're heading down there for your knowledge points, easy knowledge points to get, as well as your extra experience and reputation gain buffs that you can grab, the toys and mounts and pets and stuff that are there, the transmog that's there, or if you just want to have a good time playing Minesweeper in World of Warcraft, you can do that too. It's all there and available, so be sure you go and check out Darkmoon Fair. I know people who go down there to catch the fish out of the water, because it's great fish for, using Mythic Plus mana regeneration.
True, and you got to get the trout head thing or whatever it is to put on your head, and got to do that. I assume that the XP buff will also work with the current XP holiday buff.
I would assume so.
Just even more XP bonuses on top of XP bonuses, so should be a good leveling week to take advantage of that. I counted it up, and I still need, I forget what my final count was, but I need quite a lot of knowledge points to totally max out blacksmithing. So I'm still in the zone of Darkmoon Fair, let's go. Give me that extra. It's all for it's stuff that doesn't really matter. I can make all the important stuff now, but I want to max it all out.
I get you.
And then once that's all done, I'm already ready for a knowledge sink, because I've been maxed out on mining for quite some time, and I still get knowledge all the time. And we had a pretty modest and not very exciting sink for knowledge in Dragonflight, but I would like one in this expansion too. So maybe we could squeeze that in 11.17, or maybe, I don't know, soon something.
I would like an adjunct professor situation where you essentially can spend your knowledge points teaching to, or earn more knowledge points teaching to a group of people how to do something, and in doing so, and it could be NPCs just inside Dornogal, and in doing so, you're able to then exchange your knowledge points for knowledge points in other professions, and I think that would be a nice way to just
that would be cool. Yeah.
Off.
Basically, the concept in Dragonflight was there's these two NPCs that were in Valdrakken that were apprentices.
Yeah.
And since you were such a well-trained, whatever profession you were, you could trade them your knowledge. And I think they gave you, I want to say you got Artisan's Medal from that. So Acuity would be sort of the equivalent here. So that was, it made sense. It was fine. I would like to see something like that come in, because now we're going to get to the point where people are accruing knowledge that they will never be able to spend. So
yes, well, I'm certainly one of those people, and I would love to be able to, on characters like my leatherworker, who's also a skinner, be able to go, hey, I have all these extra knowledge points on skinning. Can I just dump them into leatherworking in some way? That would be a nice way to make that happen too, and help people catch up. So we need to have a trade system where you could trade knowledge points from one profession to the other, is what I was kind of going for with all of that. All right, hot fixes for the week. They fixed a bug preventing the Gilded of the Undermine. If you have attained 675 eye level on average, like just the actual item level, and have not yet gotten the achievement, log out, log back in, you should get the achievement. So it's not about having a 675 eye level piece in every slot. It's about achieving 675 eye level will get you that Gilded of Undermine, which then reduces the cost of Gilded crests spend on your gear. So that is across your account. So that is certainly a good thing to know, as opposed to having to max out every single piece of gear in every slot. They just want the average eye level, which is much more attainable. So I think that's a nice note to sort of get out of this.
Yeah, it's nice. This kind of, I guess this concept, was it like the end of Dragonflight this started, or was it last season? I can't quite remember. But the issue was the minor item level penalty to crafted gear was sort of the holdup there, that they had to go in and fill that gap. So they have done that, but then there was something buggy with the achievement this season. So it should be fixed now. I am not quite there yet, but I'm missing a couple pieces, a couple slots. So hopefully I'll get them soon, because what I'm really waiting for is that gilded discount on my alts, because I haven't really I maxed out their weapons because I got hero weapons on them, and I'm like, well, this seems like it's just a no-brainer. This is just worth it. But then I'll wait for, to spend more gilded crests on other hero pieces until you get, I mean, it's like a 5 crest discount per upgrade. That adds up pretty fast when you're dealing with the relatively small numbers here. So
Sure.
good thing to shoot for. And 675 also means, like, man, if you're sitting on sparks and you're sitting on crests and you're going, I wish I had something I could use these crests for, because I can't get a mythic whatever, see if you get somebody to make you one, and then you can, while you wait for the super optimized thing that you want, at least you have 675. You can get this achievement knocked out. Then that frees up your alt gilded crest to spend more and get more upgrades on. So, yeah, it's cool. I'm gonna have to seriously start looking into this myself, as I still, depends on what comes in a vault this week. I got to free up some crests for one other piece I'm trying to max out right now and stuff like that. So, I might end up literally being in that spot where it's like, okay, let me have somebody craft me a neck or something, just so I can. I'd rather use 60 crests that way and get this achievement done.
Yeah, it's funny, right? So I have at least 4 or 5 crafted pieces on my 2 top tier characters. Like, one of them, I think, actually does have 5 crafted pieces on them, just because I was managing 2 characters. They both couldn't mythic raid at the same time. So it was really about what came out of my vault, and I wasn't always getting useful things out of my vault because I had like 3 weeks of really bad vaults. So it was just one of those cases where I was like, all right, it just meant that crafting was the thing. And it has filled that gap really well on a lot of these characters. Even today, I think I'm crafting a set of bracers for my druid. And that'll go from a heroic piece that's maxed out to obviously a crafted mythic piece. And that'll be the last crafted piece that I do for my druid. So that, I think that'll be 5 pieces for my druid. I think I have 5 pieces on my evoker. And it's just one of those, like, all right, this is like crazy, the amount of crafted gear that my characters are wearing, because I just haven't had the opportunity to get myth track pieces for those other slots. And that's definitely something that's helped me out a lot. So take advantage of the crafting system for sure, and use them up now. Because I mean, you're going to go uncapped next week, right? Like, next week, there's going to be no cap on gilded crests. You'll be able to transfer valor stones from one character to another. Like, it's going to get kind of wild. So I certainly would say that there's nothing holding you back right now from just using some of those gilded crests on crafted gear. That's absolutely a smart use of them at the moment, because I mean, you're going to be able to earn as many as you want next week. And I think that even the earning we've talked about from delves goes up. So that'll be better for you as well. So anyways, it's a curious thing to see the crafting system be this involved and this good. And I personally enjoy it. So I'm glad to see it. Okay. Hot fixes for the week is continuing on. There's a lot of class hot fixes with stuff that's not working properly, like Holy Priest. They fixed an issue where Prayer of Healing, to be able to be displayed on the cooldown manager when not talented, it was just showing up there when it wasn't talented into. So, that's not super helpful, because it's not a cooldown that you can press because you're not talented into it. So things like that, that was doing it. They also, in Restoration Shamans, they fixed an issue causing damage from Acid Rain to not generate threat or aggro on enemies. I don't think Restoration Shaman should be able to just kill a pack of mobs without actually aggroing them by casting Acid Rain on them. Probably not a thing that should happen. So, yep, fix that one. That one's.
It sounds like more shaman favoritism. They just they couldn't hold this one off any longer.
No, they couldn't hold it off. The 5 Resto Shaman secret Mythic Plus plan, where they all just Acid Rain bosses to death because the bosses never actually aggro on anyone and just die. Yeah, that was secret plan. Yes. Then as far as dungeons go, they addressed an issue that caused Eerie Molds damage to fail to count towards damage taken spells like Rewind and Death Strike. Eerie Molds, so they buffed this boss, this Candle King boss, and they buffed this boss, and it is definitely more challenging now. it was interesting to do. We did this on a 14. We wiped on a 15, and we did this on a 14, and it was a very, we had to really organize how we were doing molds, which was a very interesting thing to do. So the very back wall of that room, if you have your team members as best they can stand close to that wall, you can kind of force the molds to spawn in slightly more of a tighter cluster and then work your way along that wall. And we also learned, and I'm gonna put this out here now because I've got my 14, so I guess that's fine. They might just mess me up for 15s, but who knows? If when you are targeted by his hatchet throw that he does, you stand behind the mold that looks like you, like your actual mold that is molded off your character, it will not spawn a pool when it breaks it. If he hatchet throws into any other mold, it will spawn pools. So there is an advantage to being able to get behind your own personal mold and have that one be the one that gets hit. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that as well. That helps.
Yeah, that's you really want to take advantage of that. That's just the way the pickaxe throw or whatever it is works. So you want to take advantage of that to just leave not only like some space on the floor, it gives you kind of some space to rotate into or slide into as well. Because like if you can keep that one sort of, clear, then you can move away from it. So that boss, since they fixed the bug to it, it did get a lot harder. Yeah. Now that the healing absorb thing actually functions. Yeah. And yeah, I guess that they were kind of double dipping on that, because if you had like let's say you had a blood decay or whatever, it's like, all right, you're taking, more damage from eerie molds, and then the healing absorb is on, and then you're not death striking as hard as you should be based on the damage you're taking. Like, that's a big problem. So good that got fixed. I don't know. I mean, like, it's okay. And Dark Flame, I think overall is still an easier dungeon, and it's a very favorable timer, but I wonder if we'll see further adjustments to the way that that's tuned.
I think we will.
It just does.
I think we will.
It feels like after the bug fix, even with the nerf, it still feels like it's pretty punishing compared to most of the rest of the pool.
And it's the wall right now. From everything I've read up on and looked into for people who are running high keys for Dark Flame, it is the one boss that meta comps struggle with. So they have to do a lot of off meta, trying to solve it kind of problems to try and fix this, because it's just that much more of a challenging boss to try and knock down. So. Yeah. In Priory, they resolved an issue where Dalecry, his hurl spear that he does, could damage players that were not in the indicated path of his spear. Yeah, that's not how spears work. You don't throw a spear north and then someone east gets hit in the face. That's not how that works.
And also, what is the path indicating then if it's not the path that the spear is traveling?
Exactly.
So yeah, this is a good fix. We want like the stuff that gets called out to actually get cast there.
Yeah. So that got fixed, which is good. Apparently they fixed an issue with the explosive Hearthstone that you can get, where the spell visual can be hidden from other players. What I've actually figured out about this, and maybe this is something specific with this explosive Hearthstone that wasn't working properly, and that they resolved for this one in particular. But if you turned your spell density down, so spell density is the thing that affects how many spell effects you see from other people and how intense those spell effects are. If you turn that down too low, you will stop seeing people's Hearthstone animations. It stops. There's a threshold. If you are not at least at the medium setting on that, you will just not see people's Hearthstone animations. They'll just like stand there and then disappear. It turns that animation off. So I think that's interesting, first and foremost. But yes, that is that is a threshold that you want to be at to be able to see people's Hearthstone animations. And I'm wondering if that's where this initially came from, because I remember three of us were standing around Rookery at the end of we'd finished doing a Rookery run, and the one person was like, "Can you see my Hearthstone animation?" And someone else was like, "No, I can't." "Are you doing it?" "Yeah, I am." And we had like this like back and forth conversation about Hearthstone animations, who could see them. And I remembered when we were doing Sprocket Lock and Stock on Mythic, I turned down my spell density because there's so many spell effects happening on that fight already that visually it's very cluttered and hard to track what's happening. And on Mythic difficulty, the laser beams that go across the room are these giant purple wavy beams that happen at the same times as drills happen, at the same time as other effects are happening. And you have a very narrow window to stand between, and a magnet's dragging you. So you need to be sure you stay inside that narrow passage and don't touch the big purple field. And our raid leader is like, well, if you turn down the spell density, not only does it help with all the other stuff, but it's supposed to make these look really a lot clearer. I didn't personally notice a huge difference. Apparently some people did, but I turned it down. And so then I realized, oh, I wonder if I turn this back up. And I did. There was a threshold where I turned it up enough, I could start to see everyone's Hearthstone animations again. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So that's one of those things.
This is the one that dropped from Styx. So this is like the special raid toy Hearthstone for this tier. And so like, what good is that if it's not this super loud, obnoxious thing on everybody else's screen? Like, that's why you're rolling on it. So I'm glad they fixed that.
I plugged into another Heroic Teams Friends and Family run, and this thing dropped, and I rolled and I won it. And so I was forever blamed for stealing it from their friends and family run.
Yeah, you totally did. So but hey, at least you got it, I guess. Like, good for you.
It drops pretty frequently, so I'm pretty sure everyone will get it eventually. But
it's like a guaranteed drop every week. It's just the distribution of, okay, how many weeks do we have to kill this thing in order for everybody to get one?
Exactly. You know? Anyways, they fixed an issue preventing Imurdrasil tier tokens from dropping. So that's good to hear. I'm one of the people who still goes back and runs that place regularly to try and get some of the rewards and transmog that I missed when I wasn't raiding that tier. The carved Blazicon wax bonus for versatility has been increased by 150%. So this is the versatility bonus you get for standing within the light that this trinket generates. So this trinket will put down a candle on the ground. If you stand inside the light of that candle, you get an additional versatility boost. That one's been more than doubled. So that is a big buff to this trinket. This trinket is viable, not better than, House of Cards, or better than, Mugsy's Mug Jug, but it is a really good trinket. So it is a trinket that I think that folks might want to pay attention to if they've had it sitting in their bank for a while. Their carved Blazicon wax that you can get, one of the 4 trinkets you can get from Darkflame Clef, is gotten a buff. So pay attention to that. They also buffed the Entropic Scarden Core by its intellect by 15%, and the fragments will attempt to return to the core, and that's the one from Rookery. And then the Soul-Letting Ruby, which I thought was hilarious to see. The critical strike was increased by 10%. Soul-Letting Ruby is from Shadowlands.
It was like default.
Right? Every healer had to have Soul-Letting Ruby, and then some DPS classes also had to have Soul-Letting Ruby. I think it was Warlocks in particular really wanted a Soul-Letting Ruby. They buffed its crit chance by 10%. This is weird. So this makes me go like, okay, so are we looking at are we going to have Shadowlands Mythic Plus dungeons in the next season of Mythic Plus? Is that why they're doing this? Are we getting the Soul-Letting Ruby back? Is it going to be relevant again?
That's from Theater of Pain, right?
Yeah. Soul-Letting Ruby is Theater of Pain. I thought that was from. Oh,
if it's not, then why are they?
That's why I was confused. I have to look it up.
Yeah,
now.
it's got to be from theater, right? So, which is in the pool. Like, obviously, we're doing theater on a weekly basis, so I'm pretty sure that's.
It does. This is a Caltheric. This is a Caltheric trinket.
Right. Okay, I have memories of doing theater in Shadowlands for people to get Ruby, and then I remember one of my Warlock buddies that I play with was like, making a joke about it being here, but it's not as, at least prior to this buff, it at least wasn't as kind of mission critical as in Shadowlands. So we'll see what happens now, I guess.
Man, that's so weird. My brain was definitely locked that this was a Halls of Atonement trinket. I don't know why. My brain very much had this trinket as this is Halls of Atonement. This is where this is from. And it must have been because that's where the Sin-Stained pendant came from. But for whatever reason, that was where this. I guess it also makes sense because it's Venthyr and it's the Soul-Letting Ruby, so it makes more sense to have it there than inside of Theater of Pain. But anyways, so that makes perfect sense. That's there. Thank you for reminding me, because my brain was like, are they buffing this because we're going to get Halls of Atonement back? Is that the next?
Oh, please don't. We don't want that.
Is that happening?
Can we not?
That was one of the fastest Mythic Plus dungeons that we've seen in a while, man. So.
It was. It doesn't mean it was fun. We could just not have that one. It would be okay.
I don't know, man. All right. The Nightfall scenario, they implemented some additional tuning to help players that are finding it hard to earn points for the Nightfall scenario service award score, so that they could actually get some improvements done there for them. And they increased all Flames Radiance reputation gains by 100%, including the first time completion quests and weekly quest rewards. for reputation. This means that, hey, if you're someone who had completed those weekly quests, you might have noticed you got an achievement or a bunch of renown or something happened, because you would have gotten all those buffs back. They would have retroactively given you that increase to your quests that you completed. Now, maybe not your weekly quest reputation rewards, but certainly to the first time completion quests, you would have seen that buff to your reputation gains from that. So keep that in mind. As far as the Nightfall item vendors, they now offer Arathi Abbots, Arathi Clerics, Arathi Crusaders, and Arathi Zealots weapons and shields. So more things to help you catch up.
Yeah. Really good, because some of these are the ones with the special effects on them and stuff. So now you can guarantee that you get them champ track, I believe. That you get to pick one a week after doing the weekly, but still, yeah, this is a lot better. I mean, the doubling the reputation, I think, like, you know, we don't want to grind stuff maybe to the degree that maybe Blizzard kind of lands on sometimes. I think it's what we're seeing in this patch. Like, the Goblin Cartels being an example, like, it took way longer to get a Goblin Cartel to Exalted than it did the entire, you know, Cartels of Undermine Renown track. So they bumped that up significantly. It's feeling a lot better now. It took me almost this entire time to get my first one done, and now I'm like moving briskly through the second one. And now it's like, dude, it's kind of not that bad of a value proposition to be like, okay, I'm going to go do my Flames Radiance dailies or whatever. Like, it's a decent amount of rep, and plus, you know, you get the boxes with the Warbound gear and all that. So I think these are good changes. Opening up the vendor options is great, you know, because there's some cool items that they added. These are things you might want to have, especially for, you know, an alt that's doing lower stakes content or trying to gear up, trying to you know, come up in the world in season 2 or whatever. So yeah, these are really nice changes that came in Friday, like right at the end of the week. You know, the rep buff is huge and makes me like way more likely to make sure I'm participating in this at least weekly, get this renown track done and unlock all that stuff, and not feel like the event itself is real grindy, right? Like, you kind of just sit there. It's like 15 minutes of, okay, this thing triggers and this thing triggers. Yeah. You get like minor amounts of currency for participating, and you're just kind of waiting, and then it's done. And the quests are like, go here and fill this bar up, and you go to 2 other places and fill the bar up, and then you get your thing. So it's not like it's some super fun or innovative thing to do. It's basically, you know, what we think of as chores in WoW, but you know, so give me what I can get out of it. Give me that extra 100% rep for doing it. You know, it's great. So I'll definitely get this done now. It still might only be like a weekly endeavor for me, but I have no doubt that, you know, I'll get all the rewards and stuff out of the renown track and everything.
Yeah. Now, as far as the ground skimming goes, when you're skyriding and you get close to the ground, you get that nice sort of like glowy graphic on the ground. That's called ground skimming, and you're supposed to be recovering additional vigor whenever that happens. And I feel like it's always been really low and has not, you know, felt good. And it feels like I should recover substantially more vigor ground skimming than just sitting on the ground on my mount. And sitting on the ground on my mount has always felt like it recovers more vigor than ground skimming. Well, apparently they fixed a bug that caused ground skimming during skyriding to recover less vigor than intended. So this should be a much better experience for people who are zipping around and flying close to the ground and doing that ground skimming. Hopefully that helps things out a bunch, because I always feel it's more fun to be at least flying a little bit along the ground than it is to just be sitting on the ground or running on my flying mount along the ground as I wait for vigor to come back. That's not great. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
It's so frustrating when you're out, you know, when that vigor bar is just empty and you're like, I just want to go do some stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know how long it's been bugged for, but hopefully I haven't noticed, because I haven't been out and about that much since this fix came in. Normally it's like the weekly time I spend doing like mining and treasures, right, is where I run into that, because you stop and you pick up like 3 treasures in a row, and then guess what? Yeah, you might be out of vigor at that point. Yeah. You know, mining, you could turn the thing on to regen a little bit, but yeah, if ground skimming is working a bit better for regen, that would be super appreciated.
Yes, it would. The Galagio Loyalty Rewards Club fixes are now live as of April 29th. This is from Kyvax, who says, during maintenance, we've made changes to correct the Galagio Loyalty Rewards Club bug that resulted in some players exceeding their current intended cap on renown of level 9. So for those who are unaware of this, there were people who logged in just after the .5 patch and just had 20 renown levels in their Galagio rewards program. They just, for whatever reason, just suddenly had 20 renown levels. And some people were even able to go and turn in some quests and buy some things, and were able to sort of have that happen. But the critical thing is they weren't able to get the percentage-based increase to damage and healing for raid that are built into that. You weren't able to get any of that. So some people have the mount. They've already bought the mount that's at the end of the reward track and are able to run around on that. We're riding around on it in day 1 of the .5 patch. But the important thing is that buff wasn't going in. So this is what they have to say. So all players who are above the Galagio loyalty rewards current renown level cap of 9 have been reduced to 9. So you no longer have weird outliers. I think one of our members was 16 for whatever reason. They weren't 20. They weren't. Anyways, to address the inconsistent advantages this issue provided to many players, all players who had any progress on the Galagio loyalty rewards club track have been advanced to level 9. So anyone who might have been lower than 9 have now been moved to 9. The raid buff loyal customer and the movement speed buff time is money have been removed from all characters, and the relevant quests can be recompleted from Paula Piranha in the Incontinental Hotel. Any obtained Furious Florendo and Dark Fuse compactor mounts will be unusable to players until they reach the appropriate levels of the rewards club. And the High Roller title and Hero's Path teleportation spell will be unusable to players until they reach the appropriate level of the rewards club. Please note, renown quests need to be recompleted from Paula Piranha. You may need to delete your existing Galagio rewards card silver in your bag, or sliver. No, it's silver in your bag. It's a silver card. In order for the first quest to become obtainable, to become completable. Thank you very much. So if you're someone who already has the silver card in your bag, you might have to delete it to be able to complete the quest again, if that's something you need to do. But yeah, this was a big, weird bug flub that happened. And so this is their fix for it. Their fix is obviously adding renown requirements to the mounts that people would purchase so that they can't use the mounts until they actually get the proper renown level, rolling everyone back to 9, moving everyone up to 9, just to put everyone on the same playing field, and basically letting things kick off again from there, having to redo some of your quests. So just be sure you're going and talking to Paula Piranha to make sure you are completing all these quests again that you need to complete again, and making sure that works. And by completing these quests again, I don't mean like she's going to give you a quest and you have to go out and do a whole bunch of things. It's literally a walk up and say, hey, I've achieved this renown level. And they go, oh, here's your thing. Quest complete. That is what that is. So it's not an arduous process that they've created. It's just more triggers that have to happen in the game to make sure you're getting the rewards you should have.
Yeah, this was a weird one. I was not affected by it, but at least one person on my raid team was. Yeah, he ended up at like 16 or something, I think, too. Yeah. Like not all the way up, but most of the way up, and then had stuff that he wasn't supposed to have. And then, yeah, so they did this. The cool thing is, if you're not like an every week raider, this is a huge bonus for you. If you've done some of the raid, well, hey, guess what? You get all the way up to 9 without having to have done the week in, week out raiding. So that was kind of nice. The fix was a little weird. Pretty much everybody had to delete their loyalty cards. The things that lets you teleport back to the hotel because you couldn't complete the initial quest because you already had the card. And so I had to make sure that everybody on the team went and did all that before we started raiding. Because it's up to 9% of this as of this week. In terms of the zone buff. So that's significant. Don't want to be missing out on that. And if you didn't do this, make sure that you do it. If you're a raider, go. If Paula's got an exclamation point over her head in that first room you zone into when you zone into the raid, make sure you talk to her and just get through that whole, whatever list of renown rewards you have, because they did have to kind of reset them essentially. Not your progress, but just distributing the rewards. Really weird one, but hey, cool bonus that if you weren't at 9, then you got to be at 9 right away. That's a nice, that was a nice sort of side effect of this bug fix rollback thing they had to do.
Definitely. Totally agree. There was class tuning that happened on May 6th, And so this is some more tuning for folks. Guardian Druids had their damage increased by 5%. Feral Druids had their ability and auto attack damage increased by 3%. Augmentation received yet another buff. All the damage of all their spells and abilities increased by 15%. They continue to try and make this class relevant, and it continues to sort of sit in this awkward, weird place of not really super being as relevant as Devastation. So why would you bring Augmentation? And so it just creates weird situations. Anyways, so yes, they also did that to Aug. Unholy DKs saw some changes as well. They increased their Raise Abomination melee damage by 30%. They increased their Army of the Damned Frost Magus damage by 30%. And Sand Lane now stores 25% of all shadow damage dealt into Blood Beast as opposed to 50%. So they'll nerf there to Sand Lane. Keep that in mind. Demon Hunters across the board as Havoc just got a 4% damage increase as well. That's huge. So that's a great change for them. Frost Mages saw buffs as well to their spells. Paladins, as far as Retribution goes, got some buffs here to Blade of Justice, Divine Arbiter, and Final Verdict. I will say Retribution Paladins are massively performing inside Mythic Plus, so it's interesting to see these increases come in, but they're there. Holy Priests, 4% healing increase, static. That's a great healing increase for Holy Priests. They certainly need it right now. Disc Priest is kind of ruling the scene, so I'm glad to see Holy kicking in there with some extra healing there. Arms Warriors, Blade Storm damage increased by 30%, as well as Reap the Storm for Slayer. That damage got increased by 30% as well. And Fury, the Blade Storm damage increase was also there for that 30%, as well as the Reap the Storm damage increased by 30% as well. So both Fury and Arms getting those buffs. Blade Storm damage by 30% is a lot. So you can't hit Blade Storm like on cooldown, like every 8 seconds or something, but you can certainly time it out with when ads spawn on a boss, and it does evaporate ads. So that'll be a lot of raid teams will be using that for sure as far as warriors go. That is big damn.
Yeah, I feel like, warrior DPS has been a little I don't know, undervalued in raid or something in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah.
So, this gives them a little something, and yeah, overall, I mean, we're mostly seeing buffs. I think some of this is to stuff that's really just not used as much, or maybe that really benefits from like hero talents that are not sort of the popular choices, which is an interesting way to go. I mean, you put these choices in the game for a reason. You want to be able to maybe let people play their preferred style, even if it's not super, the most maxed out or the highest ceiling or whatever. But you don't want that gap to be too large either. So I think that's probably an important part of it. I like Guardian getting some ability damage, like even just doing delves. Like Guardian feels to me like it just hits light. It's pretty comparable item level wise to my Brewmaster, and like I know Brewmaster is also not in like the greatest place right now, but I don't know, like maybe it's because Guardian, a lot of it is based on like dots and stuff. So you get all these bleeds and you got Moonfire and you're just kind of waiting. But I don't know. I'm glad to see that. I'd like Guardian to feel a little bit more impactful when I'm just tooling around doing delves and stuff. The augmentation thing is funny, but I don't know. Like, are they trying to move it into a place where its own damage is a much bigger part of its overall contribution to the group than it has this other stuff? And it's like, I think the problem with that is, how do we gauge it? Like, how do you know? I mean, I guess ideally, if you get it to where I was just talking about, it's a place where it's like it's good enough for people to use because they like playing it, and it may not be maxed out, but the gap isn't that wide. Like, awesome, but how do we gauge this as players? Like, how do you even know that it's worth trying it or whatever? Yeah. Because what you want to bring it for, the primary reason you want to bring it, it's not as good at anymore. Yeah. Until they start bringing that stuff up a little bit. I mean, you do get a lot of utility. You get the stuns and the knockups, and you get the extra defensive benefits and stuff. Like, that all matters more than people really want to give it credit for sometimes. Those are important elements. But, ultimately, DPS throughput kind of wins the day, and the faster something dies, the less anybody's got to worry about managing, kicks and CCs and dispels and whatever else. So, if it's not buffing its party mates as much as it used to, then yeah, I mean, like, it's never it can't, by definition, it can't do as much like just raw damage as devastation. So then what? And I don't know.
Yeah,
I just don't know where we're going with this spec, I guess, is really what I'm getting at.
Here's my issue. My issue is as you continue to increase its personal damage, you start to emphasize more and more on the class how important it is to be doing your personal damage and your personal damage well. Previously, it was about maintaining buffs on other people and having those buffs have good timing and line up with what other people are doing and line up with what the raid needs. And those buffs could be defensive or offensive. And it was about maintaining those things. So the whole focus for you rotation wise and casting wise was how do I maintain these things? The more emphasis you put onto the class should be doing its own personal damage, the less the actual focus of the person playing that class is going to be on maintaining those buffs, and it's going to be on how can I maintain my damage. And that's a big problem, right? For a class that should be a utility spec. I really do feel like this is a flawed logic in continuing to buff its personal damage to try and make it relevant, because the more you buff its personal damage, the more you take away from what its true, sort of reason of being is, which is it's supposed to be a class that is utility based, buffs other people in defensive and offensive ways. So it shouldn't be one that's doing a lot of personal damage. It should be one that is feeding that damage to other people, so other people are then able to contribute more, and that is what they bring to the raid, as opposed to it somehow being like, if Augmentation Evoker is suddenly beating Frost Mages on the meters, that doesn't make sense, in my opinion, when it comes to its own personal damage. Augmentation was a very high damage dealing class if you factored in all of the contributions it made when played well to your raid team and other people's damage. Sure, but its own personal damage should never have been higher than other people's damage. Like that doesn't make sense. So if we end up in a world where it starts to be that this utility class does more damage, like single target against a target dummy, than a Frost Mage does single target against a target dummy, that doesn't make sense. That logic is broken in what this class is supposed to be. So I think that's weird, and I don't know. I would prefer to see it return to its old form than go down some weird line where it ends up being like this strange, hey, yeah, you need to press these two buttons every now and then to maintain buffs on people. We're going to dumb down that aspect of the class, because really what we want you to be doing is casting damage spells and focusing on your own personal damage. That kind of eliminates the purpose of that class.
Yeah, and this is the only direction we've been going in since February.
Yeah. And
I just don't get it. I mean, maybe they're just letting it simmer and give it a couple seasons to rotate out, and then they'll like fix clutch mates and all that other stuff that really makes the augmentation part of the spec like sing, and then give it a moment in the sun and a couple seasons down the road or something. Like, I don't think that's a great way to design the game, but like, I recognize that there is a very vocal portion of the player base that just essentially wanted augmentation deleted for like a year and a half, and they more or less got it at this point. So I hope you like it, I guess. I liked having an aug in the group, especially like in our kind of relatively set group of like, there's maybe 7 or 8 of us that rotate through and play together routinely. And it's like, man, the aug just provides so much benefit, and you kind of know like when stuff is happening or who's going to be responsible for what in a dungeon. And, that I really appreciated that. And I thought it helped us kind of get over the hump with some difficulty plateaus, because it does make your group more survivable. As long as either the DPS don't die, then like it was a really fun kind of group comp. And not that, I have any issues with my Evoker buddy playing Dev. He's doing great. He's blasting away. Yeah. But it's just it's a different feeling overall, and I think we've lost something with augmentation becoming sort of a non-factor in the game at this point. It was cool. I understand that some people could find it overbearing, or because it was so much different from what we had before that they didn't want it. I'm not saying that that's invalid or whatever, but I think we've lost something at this point, and I would like to see the spec get some of its, juice back, really, and just be what we have enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the Turbo Boost event that's kicking off. they've had some Mythic Plus trinkets added, but there's caveats involved in this. So this comes in from Kyvax. He says, when the Turbo Boost goes live on May 13th, it will include some additional opportunities for players who prefer Mythic Plus dungeons. The weekly quest that provides puzzling cartel chips will now offer players a choice between killing 4 raid bosses in the Liberation of Undermine or completing 4 Mythic Plus dungeons. I would like to point out that if you're talking about Myth Track stuff, 4 Mythic bosses is way more organization than 4 Mythic Plus dungeons. Anyways, additionally, the vendor will now offer a selection of trinkets for Season 2 trinkets, in addition to the previously planned raid items. Sorry, just to circle back to that for a second. Killing 4 bosses in general, though, super easy. So that's probably easier to LFR 4 bosses than it is to do 4 Mythic Plus. Purchasing Hero Track dungeon trinkets or Hero Track raid gear will have no requirements other than the currency cost. This means that regardless of how you obtain your Puzzling Cartel chips, you can exchange them for the Hero Track raid items or Hero Track dungeon trinket. The Myth Track dungeon trinkets will require both the currency and having beat the timer in all Season 2 Mythic Plus dungeons at 12 or higher, having unlocked the Resilient Keystone system. And of course, the Myth Track raid gear will require both the currency and the victory over the item's associated boss in Mythic difficulty, Liberation of Undermine. Our goal here is to ensure that players who enjoy Mythic Plus will have a way to use this new event to obtain items they may have been chasing for weeks. As always, thank you for your feedback. So, first and foremost, a side note, I will say part of what contributed to me bringing my druid to One Arm Bandit was this change. And it was something we didn't talk about on the show last week. And I wanted to point out that Mythic teams that are doing Mythic Prog suddenly had another factor to decide in their rosters, which is if we're going to be progressing on Mugsy and we're going to be progressing on Gallywix, and we want these classes in for it, we probably want these classes in for One Arm Bandit so that they can buy their Mythic Best in Slots and their Mythic House of Cards, so that they have those upgrades on May 13th for a progression working on the following bosses. A similar decision would have to be made, obviously, for Mugsy, for then going to work on Gallywix, which is a weird thing to have to think about with the system. And it's just like another flaw in the system that I'm pointing out of like, you have raid teams who are like, hey, who am I bringing to this Mythic fight? I can only bring 20 people. Well, hopefully it's the people you're bringing to the next 2 fights, because those people might want to buy something off of One Arm Bandit if it's something that they need. And that's just that's a weird thing to have to think about with that system. Okay, focusing back on this post. Mythic 12s completed in time across the board, having resilience unlock in order to get these trinkets. First of all, I love that Mythic Plus trinkets are being added to the vendor. I think that's great. I'm glad they're going to be there. But if you want the Myth Track ones, you got to do 12s in time. How do you feel about this, Jason?
Oh man, sometimes I describe stuff that WoW does from these types of like systems and rewards designs as like a good idea wrapped in layers of bad ideas, or a bad idea wrapped in layers of good ideas. And this is a case of we have a good idea with so many layers of bad ideas wrapped around it, right? Like even within this post, just all the stuff we talked about last week, and I don't want to revisit that too deeply. Like go listen to last week's episode if you want to hear our thoughts on the system at large. This is an improvement. This is better. Thank you. Yeah. Now what? What's the next step? How do we take this even farther? Offering players more choices as to how they complete the quest is great.
Yeah.
Because what you were saying to non-raiders is you have to do LFR and you have to do multiple wings of LFR, at least sit in the queue, right?
Well, or if you're someone who does Mythic Plus and you want a really good trinket, you have to buy or find a Mythic raid team that'll get you in for a Mythic kill to be able to get that trinket.
Right. Well, that's unlike the ability to buy it, but just to get your weekly quest done, to get your chip or to get your third of a chip, then it's like if you're not on a raid team, you don't raid regularly, it's like that was super restrictive. I know it's supposed to be about the raid gear rewards, but we haven't had this before. It's been part of a bigger weekly wrapper around like do stuff in the game, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So just adding an extra way to complete the quest is good. I think we could expand that out even more. I love Mythic Plus trinkets being on the list here because this means I can get at least one item that I know is like best in slot for me. It's very desirable on myth track, and I don't have to worry about like random chance out of the vault because it's the only way to get mythic plus items myth track.
Is it a certain floodgate trinket? Is that what I'm thinking of?
No, it's actually I have that one. It's a trinket from Priory. There's a really good tank trinket from Priory that I have not seen, I think, at all. Not just hero track, but like not even, just some even lower track version of it. So like that's really nice. That checks the box for me. And I get like a real legitimate benefit out of this system, which it wasn't looking like I was getting as much of prior to this change. That said, the fact that you have to finish all 12s in order to unlock the myth track versions of the trinkets is ridiculous. What are you doing, Blizzard? Like, what is this? Like, is this whole system designed just to make players feel bad that they can't do hard enough content? Because that's what it seems like. Like, if you do a plus 10, if you do your plus 10s for Vault, your Vault has myth track items. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you should be able to unlock the ability by finishing plus 10s. Have this require even like Keystone Hero or something, which I think all plus 10s would pretty much cover. Maybe you'd have to do like an 11 here or there, but that would be so much less restrictive than unlocking Resilience. It's so much easier. That's a huge gulf. And the item level rewards that you're getting on a weekly basis are exactly the same. So the logic just doesn't hold up there. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. It doesn't matter for me. I have plus 12 resilience. I've put the work in. I can just benefit from this. This will come out next week. I'll get my first chip probably from raid because we'll kill 4 raid bosses. Then I'll go buy my tome and then I'll upgrade it and I'll be happy. But then I'll get my 2 other items that I have to kind of hem and haw about. What am I even going to do with them? Like having just dungeon trinkets is cool to a point, but it's you're letting us buy 3 items now. You've decided, but I don't need 2 more myth track trinkets from the Keystone pool. There's some items I would like from raid if I could get that 14 or 16 track upgrade system back on them, but I'm hoping that they continue to consider how restrictive this system is and how bad it makes people feel for no legitimate reason. I like these changes. I'm glad they're making it a bit better. I hope they don't stop, man. I would like to see a wider variety of loot on the vendors, and I would like to see everything have the expanded upgrade track. You have to have crests in order to take advantage of leveling that up, which means you have to have done what they consider to be appropriately difficult content. So I don't see, to me, there's no disconnect there. It's like you're going to nerf the trinkets and all this stuff anyway as we move into season 3. They always do. Just let us have fun with the game and bump this resilience unlock requirement down to Keystone Hero, at least for the myth trinkets, if not farther. Like, I just don't understand that piece. It's so restrictive. It's like that's like even for mythic dungeon players, it's even worse than you have to kill the mythic raid boss to unlock the particular item. I feel like it's so much harder than what you have to do to get the item just from normally playing the game. So I don't know. It's like, this feels like you go to a restaurant, right? And you order like your favorite dish and they get it wrong and they bring you like something else and you eat it and you're like, this is still good, but it's not what I ordered, right? Like that's sort of what this is morphing into. Like, cool, I really want my one good item. I'm happy with that, but what have we done here? And how many players don't even get to my level of satisfaction with the system, which is quite low? I'm going to guess most players are still like, this still stinks. Why is this like this?
Yeah. There's a lot of concerns when it comes to how players earn rewards inside the game. And I think you summed it up really well by saying, I earn myth track rewards by completing 10s in time. That's how I get myth track rewards out of my vault. Why does this token require 12s? I'm with you. I don't understand why it requires 12s. I think 10s in time, or like you said, tying it to the achievement makes perfect sense to me, as opposed to, for whatever reason, choosing 12s. 12s feels arbitrary to me. It was already described, 12 is already described as something that players should do just for fun. If that's something they want to do for fun, it's not something they're doing for some kind of actual, reward. You've now tied power gain to doing 12s in time. Why would you tie power gain to someone's character to doing 12s in time? That doesn't make sense. So I'm with you. It bothers me. I wish it wasn't the thing that we were looking at and talking about, but here we are again, talking more about the chip. So hopefully that gets tuned and adjusted and we see that change to 10s. I think that would be in the best interest for everyone to have that happen. Okay. So we also, as we mentioned top of the show, got announcements about Legacy of Aerothor, which is the 11.1.7 PTR development notes and PTR build that's currently up. I'm not going to do the deep dive on it. It is something I'm going to save for next week because we have like a whole other half of a show, at least, in conversation stuff to talk about. Because we're going to talk about the interview with Ian that took place as well. There's a lot more to talk about here. So I'm going to save the bulk of this post for next week. I will say there'll be an Arathi Highlands campaign. You go lore walking with Lorcar Cho. There's going to be things called overcharged delves. There's going to be a new combat assistant and single button assistant, which also raised some flags this week and has a feedback post, which we're about to go into. So we will talk about that this week. There's user interface accessibility changes. There's more stuff about the cooldown manager, and there's turbulent timeways. And now everyone's like, oh my God, turbulent timeways. Okay, this is how we figure out when patches happen. This is how we figure out when patches happen with turbulent timeways. Okay, so based off of tinfoil hats, we're going to be seeing 11.1.7 before or on June 17th. That's when this patch is most likely going to hit, which is why I'm like, okay, we can wait a week to talk about this. It's fine. We're a little ways out. It's good. We'll get more details. There'll be plenty to talk about next week, which then means that most likely based off of the turbulent timeways that then kicks off and runs for, weeks after that, we'll be seeing patch 11.2 on August 5th with a season 3 launch on August 12th is what all of the tinfoil hats are leading towards now for people who are trying to plan out their summers. Which is hilarious because 2 weeks ago I said the exact thing, but it had nothing to do with turbulent timeways. It was just me guessing based off of the relationship of of how long I thought patch cycles were going to be, which was kind of funny. So my guesses seem to be fairly accurate, which is nice. Okay, setting aside that whole release and what's happening with it, what's going on with it, talking about the single button assistant mode. This was an interesting hot topic that came up. So single button assistant mode is the single button where it's a new spell that you can click and drag to your action bar from your spell book. It's going to be in the top right of your spell book. And the single button will cycle through a prioritized list of abilities that your character knows and automatically use them on your current target. And you can actually see a full list of what those abilities are on your current specialization if you want. You can right click on this and sort of, expand it, and it will pop out and show you what those things are. Using the single button will impose a penalty on your global cooldown. I think right now it's 0.2 seconds that it adds to your global cooldown, so that you are, but by not having to learn a rotation and just pressing this button in its place, you are penalized slightly small amounts of time every spell that you're casting, using this as the spell that you're casting. Okay. There's also an assisted highlight. The assisted highlight is a slightly more advanced version of the single button assistant. To use this feature, you will need to enable assisted highlight option inside the advanced options tab in the games menu. The assisted highlight doesn't automatically cycle through your abilities for you like the single button assistant does, but rather it recommends a button to press for you on your action bar by highlighting a button on your action bar with a green border. There is no penalty for global cooldown for using the assisted highlight. The design guidelines for this that they went into says that the single button assistant and the assisted highlight modes do a lot of things, but they will not fully play your character for you. There are several decisions we made about our expectations for what these functions perform or recommended are for you. The single button assistant and the assisted highlight modes will adjust to your abilities, adjust to abilities from changing talents, and include them in the cycle of abilities used or highlighted, and swap between single target and AoE spells based on your proximity of nearby enemies to your primary target. The single button assisted and highlighted assisted modes won't move your character around the world, or any mobility buttons like blink, sprint, or heroic leap, change targets for you if your target dies, or if the debuff or if you have to debuff multiple enemies. Use major offensive cooldowns like Avenging Wrath, Bladestorm, or Ascendance. Interrupt enemies or otherwise use utility crowd control spells. Use your heal on low health characters or use defensive abilities, and use any trinkets, potions, trade skill items, or similar items in your inventory. So they're seeking feedback on this. It's a new element they're looking at implementing sometime before June 12th. So sometime in 11.1.7. And this is a new feature that they're adding in, is this single button press. So initial reaction, Jason, to this system. What do you got?
My initial reaction is, you know what? We've spent a lot of time in my circles talking about complexity of the game and barriers to entry and stuff. And also I have 2 8-year-olds who are interested in playing WoW someday. And I think of easy on-ramps to having fun with the game as an awesome thing. So I'm surprised they're doing something like this, in fact. And I think it's going to be a good change. I think it's going to open up the game for a lot of people. It's, younger players, older players, people who have difficulty like operating like a keyboard or mouse with a whole bunch of buttons on it for any variety of accessibility reasons. Like, it doesn't have to be any particular class of person or like condition that means that. It's like, all different people from anybody could benefit from this, right? So I kind of look at it that way. They've already hot fixed the on PTR the penalty to 0.3 seconds per GCD. So I think that's something they're probably going to look at pretty close, because you don't necessarily want to remove all skill expression from the game, right? Like, that would be bad, but this does open it up more, makes it a lot more accessible for like controller play too, which could be great for people with wrist issues and stuff like that. I think the fact that they really point out, like, okay, you're not going to move, you're not going to use your movement spells this way, you're not going to be able to interrupt, which is huge, right? You're not going to use your defensives, you're not going to use consumables or trinkets or whatever with this button. This button is like for your abilities. I think that's an important distinction too. Like the game in a lot of ways, like executing your rotation is kind of assumed, and these elements are what the game actually is, right? Like moving around the space where you're in combat, using context sensitive abilities at the right time, things like that. Like, that's the really rewarding decision making in World of Warcraft, in my opinion. So the fact that they point that out, like right off the top, like it's not going to do this, I think that's a really important distinction. But also, like, there is a wide breadth of content where doing stuff like that doesn't really matter. If you're a collector, you just want to do outdoor stuff, even delves up to a certain degree of difficulty, just go do old raids, all that kind of stuff. It opens it up so much. Also, like, just if you want to try out a spec you've never played before, just not having to do all of that initial kind of prep setup. Let me set up a build and like look up the rotation and what does this mean? And okay, if I have these talented, then the rotation changes like this. Like, I'm not saying those elements of the game aren't fun, but they're not fun as step one all the time, right? Like, that's a fun thing to dive into if something clicks with you and you want to learn it. So
sure, yeah.
I think there's also a lot of opportunity for people wanting to try out new specs and learn new ways to play, which is always cool. My initial thought is also that, like, you're not going to be able to like tank with this or heal with it because everything is so context sensitive, and this is just going to have you do your offensive spells. But I guess like it will help you weave that stuff in. You could just use it as like a button among it doesn't mean you can only press one button, right? It just means like your sequence of damage abilities fires off of this one button. So that could actually make some of those support roles a little more approachable for players too. Because it's like, okay, well, if you want to tank as warrior, like you put your shield block here and you ignore pain over here and you interrupt over here. And like when you're not pushing those, like you push your attack button essentially, right? Like that could work. It's more complex than a DPS spec, but
right.
I think it's cool, and the assisted highlight, which is, it's sort of their in-game nod to. There's different add-ons over the years that have done this, where it like highlights the next button it thinks you should press in sequence.
Yep.
I mean, how many times? Not just about specs or combat or classes or whatever. Do we talk about like the game doesn't present the player enough information? The player has to go to outside resources for information. The player doesn't have complete information, so doesn't really know or not getting feedback about if they're making the correct decisions, especially in combat. Like, I know that this is controversial for some reasons, but overall, like, I think this is going to be a great addition to the game. I don't think it's going to present me with too much. Like, I'm not really interested in using this for me, but I think what'll be really cool is to, when my kids are really old enough to kind of sit down and operate like a mouse and keyboard and play a PC game, I can set this up for them and we could just kind of roll around and go do, I don't know, Karazhan or something, right? And they can hit their buttons and shoot spells off and feel like they're having fun controlling a character without that complexity of like, okay, well, here's like 9 abilities. Which buttons do you want to put them on? And then like you have to push them in this sequence. Like I'm not saying that design is bad, right? Like I like that about WoW, and that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to the combat year after year after year. But for like step one for an uninitiated player, it's a lot. So I just think there's so much potential here to open up different avenues for players to have fun with the game in ways that never exist. I mean, dude, like I really like think about the controller possibilities and stuff, like you can consolidate all that stuff to one button on a controller map, and then it opens it up so much. Like I am not like in fear of the future of the game because we're making it too easy to play. That does not cross my mind. You always have a benefit if you can manage more key bindings and you can be more optimal, have a lower GCD, and have the ability to know like, okay, this is where my big major cooldown goes. This is where my potion and trinket go. I'm going to interrupt every cast of like, that's the decision-making and the timing that makes you good at the game in terms of that end game content. I'm not really concerned about that stuff getting stepped on because we've made the game just more approachable in general. I think it's a good thing to do.
So here's like I fully agree with all the statements you've made. I definitely think it's great that it's making the game more accessible. I do think about kids and younger people and even people who might feel like there's a barrier to entry for the game who are, maybe old enough who've played other games, getting into the game and being able to play it because of features like this. Like I think it's really important. Or as sort of you talked about with the highlight assisted mode, where essentially you're learning a rotation. It just says, hey, I'm trying out a new class. I'm an alt. I've never played Shadow Priest before. I want to know what a Shadow Priest rotation is. As opposed to reading a bunch of stuff off Wowhead to try and figure that out, you could just hop on a Shadow Priest and essentially just go. And it will just highlight buttons for you and you press them when it highlights them. So you learn, oh, I'm pressing this now. Oh, I'm pressing that now. I'm pressing this now. This is the rotation of what I need to do. Oh, this interacts with that. Oh, that's why that's happening. Like you can sort of suss that out a lot easier than having to read through a Wowhead article to try and figure that out. So I see benefits to that. I have concerns, obviously, about the tuning and them having to keep a close eye on making sure that this doesn't become something where like heroic raiders are essentially just using this mode on, a lot of bosses because it lets them just focus on making sure their feet aren't standing in something they're not supposed to be. And that's where all their focus can be because they can just bind this button press to all of their movement keys or all of their other keys that they might press at all, or just have a one key that they just press consistently. And every time they stop moving, it casts the next spell they're supposed to cast or whatever it is they're supposed to do, especially as a melee class that doesn't have wind up times and cast times and whatnot, where you can just bind it to everything and to just basically strafe around the boss pressing this button. So it is important that it's balanced that way. However, I think the largest thing that got me about this is them identifying a problem with World of Warcraft. That problem is, and it's something that we've talked about many times, it's a bloat of abilities on characters and classes. My druid has 42 different buttons on his hotbars. Because I can shapeshift, that's actually 66 different buttons that I can press and use on a regular basis. That's how many hotkeyed buttons I have. That's how many buttons I can press on hotkeys. It doesn't count the clickables I have on the side of my screen that are like portals and health hearthstones and things like that I can use, right? And mounts and stuff for like, auction house or whatever. Those are all on actual clickables. But hotkeyed buttons, I'm at like 66 hotkeyed abilities playing my class. Now I play a class that should have an additional amount of buttons than everyone else because I have multiple forms and it's about changing shape. And every time you change shape, all those buttons change. So like it kind of makes sense that you'd have a lot of buttons to press. I still feel like even the most complex class in WoW, in my opinion, should not have more than like 22 buttons or 24 buttons that are hotkeyed for you to play the class well at a mythic level, in my opinion. I don't think it should. I think there's a massive issue with the amount of abilities that exist within the game, in my opinion, and that creates complex rotations. And as much as this is going to simplify, like, hey, you know what? The 6 or 7 spells that you press on a regular basis as part of your rotation, this will do that for you. And that's great. You're still going to have 25 other buttons that you need to know how to press for, as you said, interrupts, different cooldowns, et cetera, that obviously they think of this as a stepping stone to then allow people to sort of parse, oh, I could need to press these other buttons too at the same time as I'm pressing this, or before I press this, or weave this into the rotation this button's doing for me. And so I feel a lot like this is a band-aid over a greater problem. And I think the greater problem is that World of Warcraft is a game that has, a lot of ways to do one thing, which is if you're attempting to contribute damage to a boss and do damage to them, do we really need rotations that are 6 buttons? And then, now it's going to be an AoE rotation. Okay, well, put aside 4 of those 6 buttons. Here's 4 different ones that you need to be pressing for the AoE rotation. Okay, well, we want to use cooldowns too. Okay, well, here's 5 cooldown buttons on top of those ones. Weave those in there too. And movement speed. You need to be able to move out of stuff. Okay, well, we'll add 4 different movement abilities too, because they'll have different timers on them. And you can't blink all the time. So maybe you also need to be able to run fast. So we'll give you a button that does that. And we'll give you a button that when you shield someone, they then run fast. So then we have utility spells, or what you apply to other people in the group when you can cast on other people to sort of help them out. Things like Zephyr that reduces the damage that a group takes, that even DPS specs like Devastation have, that they contribute to the group. So that's another, 8 buttons that we add onto that. You just watch it build up and you're like, okay, guys, like, I feel like you could slim a lot of this down, and that you could have a 4 or 5 button rotation that then adds in 3 cooldown buttons or 2 cooldown buttons that help that out, that then add in, and you can just trim a lot of that down and end up with a more accessible game in general that doesn't have players needing, like, the invention of the MMO mouse says everything to me of, you ran out of buttons with your left hand to press. Let's give you some for your thumb. Like, that's really what ended up happening. Because a lot of people are like, if you ever watch what Mythic Raiders do, they'll have, like, if you ever look at their key bindings, they'll have like Alt-T, Alt-R, Shift-Alt-R, Control-Shift-T, like all sorts of buttons that are near their left fingers bound to abilities. And they'll do that, plus they'll have additional buttons elsewhere because they just have so many buttons I need to press. I have 12 buttons on my mouse with Alt, Shift, and Control modifiers. That's 36. With then other buttons on top of that I press. Like, it's a lot. And you're like, okay, I do feel like at a certain point, your actual issue is you just have too many things that players need to be able to do to play the game well. Maybe you could slim that down some. And does that remove a skill cap in some way? It might change the skill cap a bit. We're about to talk about the Ian interview, and he talks about skill cap in the game. But I feel like if you are trying to make the game more accessible to players, the larger issue is your game has too much levels of complexity to it, and adding a feature like this sure helps people entry level get in, but are they going to stay once they realize that there's 30 other buttons that they have to press on a regular basis to be able to play the game well? I don't know, but we have to wait and see. So I think it's a great tool. I think it's wonderful that they're adding it in. I think it's certainly going to help a lot of accessibility for people getting into the game and learning new specs and whatnot. I still think that the larger issue is they need to do a big cut on abilities, and we need to see those buttons drop down to that, like 25 should be the number they just aim to hit for most classes of like buttons that end up being hotkey. Like 25 should be the top end that you'd want a hotkey. After that, it should just be hearthstones and mounts and things, portals and things like that. On top of, outside of that. So I don't know. That's where I fall with this. It seems, and I'm talking about per spec. Like I'm not talking about like, the Warriors should only have 25 buttons, no matter what spec you're in, the overall total amount of buttons. So, an Arms Warrior might have 8 or something, right? Like, I don't think that's what it should be. I think each of those specs you should not be hotKeying more than 25 buttons at any given point in World of Warcraft. And I think that's an achievable goal that they could set out for, that it's not too unreasonable to go for. And part of those hotkeyed buttons are things like health potions and things like that need to be hotkeyed in there as well. So just keep that in mind too. It's not just abilities, it's other things that end up in bar, like, trinkets and everything. Like I use huge macros now. I use macros that include, potions and, trinket usage and some ability usage. Like I just roll things into macros now to try and make it so I have even fewer buttons to press if I can. And I still fill out that 44, hotkeyed buttons. Like I still have that. So just, food for thought on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think complexity in and of itself is a bad thing, but there's a difference between decision-making complexity or like the load that you're putting on players to manage things like buff uptime or whatever, and then the part where it's you have to wade through 60 different abilities in your spell book and deciding on which one, and your talents, and deciding like which ones don't actually matter, which ones need to be hotkeyed, what stuff you can macro together, stuff like that. I think that the fun complexity is like, how do I set up my build, and then how do I make good choices in combat, right? Like to me, that's what's cool about it. Okay, my build is set up. How do I manage all of these keybinds for all these different buttons that I need? That is certainly complexity, but that's not fun complexity.
Not fun.
So,
agreed.
Yeah, like I think maybe this, some of this could be like a gateway into let's just straight up streamline a lot of combat rotations and stuff. And I guess the other thing too is, I think of how this will work with proccing abilities. I mean, I could go test this right now. I guess it's on PTR as we speak. But so like, we just kind of assume that this is going to work well for its one stated goal, but I guess I have like few fears about this being just the accepted correct way to play the game, and which I know like some people seem to be very concerned about, right? Like,
some people.
This is gonna obviate my own player agency, my skill, my decision making. I really don't think so. If you're a player who massively benefits from this, then there were probably mistakes you were making in terms of your decision making, right?
For sure.
But also, if this takes some burden off of you and you can still do competent DPS and it frees you up to weave your utility abilities in more, position better, just assist your team more, maybe that's a win. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I know people feel like having like an assistant or having like an easier way to do it is just inherently bad, and I don't see it that way, but I also don't believe that the devs will balance the game where the correct way to play is with single button assist. Like I don't see them leaving it in that state for long if it ever even ends up that way. But yeah. I mean, I've been wrong about this stuff before, and sometimes I can't always obviously predict what the devs are going to do. It's their game. Just look at the discussions we've had the last couple of weeks about some of these rewards choices, but I don't think they want this to be the way higher end players are approaching the game. They want higher end players to be more engaged with their characters' moment to moment choices. It's just, they understand that higher players doing higher end content are willing to sign up for a higher execution burden, and not everybody is approaching World of Warcraft that way. But the way the game is currently designed, everyone kind of has to, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to go get an add-on that manages your rotation helper if that's the way that you want to play. Single button isn't really an option, things of that nature. So, I just think it's a net good for the game. I think it's going to result in more people having more fun with WoW, both of these editions. I just can't see it any other way than that. I don't think it's going to take away anything from anybody. It just gives people more options to enjoy the game.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's going to take away anything. I would struggle to believe that Blizzard would allow the best way to do heroic content to be, hey, get out there and just focus on mechanics on the floor and press this one button and you'll be fine. Like I don't think it should ever end up being in that position. I don't think Blizzard will let it end up being in that position. But I did just want to point out the larger issue at stake, which is, hey guys, maybe the reason why you're having to incorporate a button like this is because a lot of other MMOs and a lot of other games out there only have 5 buttons that people press on a regular basis. And you have 20 something that people have to press on a regular basis just to do one thing. And as soon as you add in utility on top of that, you can add another 8 buttons to that. And like that, there's like, it's huge by comparison. So just factor that in. Like, just, like if you think about like what currently what a rogue rotation is, which is not like something you consider to be a incredibly complex melee class. It's like, it's a lot of buttons that they have to press on a regular basis to do things. And there's a lot of like resetting and dipping out of combat and all that kind of stuff to do. And so I'll be really curious to see what this one button is. I'm going to expand all those different classes and look at it to be like, oh yeah, so like warrior is 8 buttons and druid is, 12 buttons. And like, I'm just going to be really curious to see what this rotation stuff does, or whether it's going to be the dumbest of the dumb versions. And it's like druid's 4 buttons until like you enter an eclipse, and then it's still 4 buttons, but it's different buttons. And you're really missing out on a huge part of your DPS because it's not even applying some of these other things that it, you really should be doing as part of your rotation on a regular basis. Like, I know it's not going to be cat weaving in for, bear form stuff. Like, I know that's not going to be happening. It's not going to be shape shifting you into cat form, hitting a button, shape shifting you back into bear when you're tanking. Like, that's not going to be a thing.
I can't see that happening, right? But like the talents like specifically call that out, so I feel like it should. Like if you build that way,
that's what I'm saying, right?
I should test it. I should really just download the client and mess around with it and see what it'll do, because like that's a very intentional build path within the game right now, and so I'd be curious to see if like will one button know that like, okay, I have 6 stacks of the buff now. Now it's time to go cat. Now it's time to spend my combo points on the big bleed. Now it's time to shift out of cat. Like, if it does, it should do that. It would be awesome.
Well,
but like,
it should.
It seems like a level of complexity that tool. I'd be surprised if it handled it well. Honestly, I guess. But
that's what I'm saying. Right?
Pleasantly surprised, right? Like,
yeah. So that to me is one of those things where when you think about it, I really do want to see what some of these layouts look like. Okay, now into like a conversation I was not expecting to hear this week. This was a video that came out with Ian being interviewed. Not really interviewed, I guess, having a conversation with Max and Dratnos from the mythic rating scene, the high-end mythic rating scene. And they were chatting about add-ons, basically, for World of Warcraft and the state of the difficulty of the game, how add-ons are being used in World of Warcraft, and what the future design intentions are from Blizzard around add-ons, and what's sort of, because we saw things like, obviously, this one button coming in. We saw things like the cooldown manager coming in. So there's clearly been some sort of adjustment or shift about Blizzard trying to incorporate some more of these add-ons into the base UI to try and help people out. So what this conversation, this is a 45-minute conversation that happened. And so we have abbreviated that initial conversation that they had. Jason went through, watched the video twice just to make sure he didn't miss anything, pulled out all the details from Ian that were really important, and made sure that he had the quotes from those details. And then from that, I have then highlighted chunks of that I felt really are impactful that we can talk about. So I'm just basically saying this is no substitute for just going and watching the video if you really want to spend the 45 minutes learning about this stuff. But these are the points we wanted to chat about from their conversation. And so the first thing I've highlighted here is that the first steps are really, this is from Ian, the first steps are really going to be continuing to build up the right out of the box functionality that World of Warcraft offers to shrink the gap that's sort of happening there, that these add-ons are contributing to the game to sort of help players be able to do difficult combat. So they're aware that the very end of this process, they're probably going to have to rein in some functionality of add-ons, but we'll talk about that later. But they really want to be sure that the in-game options that are there help shrink the gap what the players are experiencing right now, where they're feeling they have to use add-ons to be able to do some of these difficult encounters. So if you look at the old school WoW days, there were encounters that were the primary challenge for your raid, that were designed around coordinating some rotation or execution beyond that wasn't super complicated. So in other words, like Lady Vash back in the day used to be, hey, you got to pass the basketballs. You would kill a water elemental at the bottom of the stairs. It drops a ball. You pick it up. You pass that ball to your friend. That friend then dunks it into the, upper platform. And that is the mechanic. And that's the mechanic for that boss. And that was as complex as it got. You didn't really need weak auras to sort of do that. You had more, as Ian put it, MMOE-like communication, cooperation, figuring out these systems, and being able to actually execute these things. So they want to get back towards that level of communication and remove the reliance that's happening on weak auras. Because as he describes it, right now, it's downloading weak aura packs, setting it up appropriately, maybe having 3 or 4 wipes because there was a typo in the configuration. And that's just not something anyone wants raiding to be. Like, it's not at all that. So they're going to move away from those mechanics as much, and of using those mechanics as much, and lean more on things that add-ons can't solve for you, like moving out of a swirly under your feet with only a little bit of time to respond. And they don't think it's a coincidence that's sort of what they ended up doing, is going towards that direction, which is like those twitch reaction avoidance mechanics that used to be one type of fight that they sort of design and create. And so they sort of went, okay, since add-ons are solving this, we'll make the skill level basically be, hey, you got to be really twitchy to be able to play our game well and really be able to dive out of stuff immediately, because that's how we can make the content difficult, because add-ons are solving all of the other things that are going on. So what this sort of went on to mean is that there were broader restrictions on specifically what information add-ons had access to about combat events in real time. And at the same time, I'm going to read this quote from Ian. At the same time, we know that's not a thing that we could just do right now without providing a lot on our end, both in, this is removing add-ons, both in terms of, just UI type functionality, but also looking at how we're designing some encounters, how some of our classes work. So as much as they're talking about scaling back the access that add-ons have, they're also choosing to make sure that that they are not going to just pull the rug out from underneath people. This is, and I'll emphasize this is something that he talks about in 3 different points throughout this entire interview. They are not going to remove any access to add-on stuff, it sounds like, until like years after all this stuff is in place. I actually, I'm going to quote Josh Devalor, who also does a WoW chat YouTube stuff about this, because he said it really well to me, which is he expects Blizzard will wait until someone mentions weak auras and people playing the game don't really know what they're referring to, or think of it as this really old thing they used to use, before they actually start removing something like the functionality of having weak auras in the game from the game. So it's not something you need to worry about. I think they would very much want the game to move to a state where an add-on is so unused by players that it is no longer relevant, because they've incorporated stuff in the game that's good enough to cover those issues, that they're at that point where they then remove those things. So I don't want anyone to worry about that, because they mentioned it several times through here. So I wanted to be sure that they were comfortable with that. So far,
yeah, just to jump in on that, I just want to piggyback off that real quick. Like, it's a little confusing because This video came out the same day that 11.1.7 was announced.
Yes.
And there was a chat early in the video about 11.1.7 features like single button assist and assisted highlight. They then spent the rest of the time talking about very long-term goals for the game and the future of the development of the game. So it might be a little confusing. Like, they're not like breaking these raid assist add-ons next patch or the patch after that or the patch after that, right? Like, they sort of have this road ahead of them where they want to improve a lot of baseline functionality in the game that makes it actually sort of suboptimal to bother like maintaining a whole add-on suite to track information that the game should be giving you.
Yes.
At which point, like, they, at some, in the future date, they will then feel comfortable with restricting add-on access to this information. And then that should ultimately open up the design space for them to do stuff to challenge players to coordinate without resorting to, well, just have a week or assign everything out. And if your assignment is this, you do that. Which is, this has been sort of a hot button topic around rating for a long time. It feels like it's something that has picked up momentum it's been getting kind of worse. Although we refer to the arms race, right, in recent years between like add-on developers and versus the game devs. And I think this is a moment that was sort of unavoidable. It was inevitable that they were going to kind of get to a point like this. So I just want to kind of I just want to preface like the rest of our discussion about it with the fact that I'm glad that they open sort of the first steps of this process are the game director of many, many years, who we know is a very dedicated player, like opening the conversation by saying, this is where we want to get to. This is ultimately what our goals with the system are. And there is no real concrete timeline right now, but this is where we want to get to. I think it's an important way to kind of start the process, is with that. Like, I roasted Blizzard about their awful communication about the cartel chips last week. I think this is the opposite of that. And hopefully, like, they can set expectations about what changes are going to come and when, and about, have sort of a dialogue with add-on developers and stuff like that. I think, it's not like add-ons are going to go away, but they're going to be more. I think the goal is to get them more to a space where they're for their original sort of intended purpose and the reason why they're allowed in the game in the first place, which is that like UI customization and presenting you with information about your character or like what you're doing in the game world right now versus solving a raid mechanic for a group of players, right? Like, and I think that's a good place for the game to be. I'm excited to hopefully get there someday where all of that stuff feels more organic inside raid combat, but you can still do whatever you want to do to your game UI, right? Like, that would be a good place for us to live.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing to me because the whole point of this conversation was, this is how we used to design fights. Players developed add-ons to sort of deal with, this is the way that we were designing fights, because we weren't providing the tools for players to actually be able to complete these encounters well. And so players just did that for us. We relied on that for a while, and then we eventually challenged them to a race to be like, oh, maybe we can just make stuff even harder, and then they'll just make even better add-ons and make stuff even harder, and eventually someone will cave, right? And what the player base is who suffered for this entire race is the vast majority of the player base, because the people using these add-ons, first and foremost, most of these add-ons were proprietary in the sense that Liquid would develop all of their own stuff behind closed doors that they would use for the race, and then maybe a month after the race finished, they'd start releasing stuff to everybody else, which meant that for those first few months, it just was pure suffering for the majority of people who were doing this content because they didn't have access to the stuff that Blizzard assumed they'd have access to when they were designing the encounters. So they moved away from designing encounters that way and started going, yeah, well, we're just going to design encounters that make people have to move really quickly and react really quickly. Well, you're dealing with an aging player base. That isn't what you think of when you think of an aging player base. You don't think of an aging player base and be like, oh yeah, these are like those twitchy 13-year-olds. You're like, no, they're not. They're players who who are not twitchy, but they're good problem solvers. So you give them a problem and they'll be able to sort through that problem and figure it out. But if you tell them, pay attention to your feet and move the moment the circle appears, they're not going to pay attention to that. They're going to use it. They even mentioned here add-ons like GTFO, which is, hey, you're standing in something you shouldn't be. There's a loud bleeping noise happening. Please move out of it. That is necessary for a lot of raiders these days to even notice, oh, I'm standing in something I shouldn't be. Like that's the whole floor is on fire around my character. I just didn't notice. Like you need that loud beeping noise to figure that out. Like that's how they started designing stuff. And so now they're like, all right, well, we got to scale this. We got to take the whole arms race off the table. And we need to start designing fights so that we give the tools to players that are needed to be able to do the fights well without relying on add-ons to be able to be the thing for those players to do it. So we either need to give them the tools or we need to design fights in a way that it isn't essential that you have these things to be able to do them. And to me, it screamed of the Lords of Dread conversation that we had ages ago, multiple times on this show, of, hey, you put a boss fight into the game that required add-ons to solve on a regular basis. On Mythic, you had to have add-ons. They gave you so little time to solve the problem before it wiped you that you literally needed an add-on to let you do that. And the concept for the ability that there's a few abilities that were in that raid for sure that you need add-ons for, but the Lords of Dread one was the add-on would let you vote as a team as to who they could see with wings, with these like phantom, hard to see, faded out wings on their back. And if you could see the wings on their back, it meant that they were one of the people who were infected. And so everyone inside the group had to essentially within, I think it was 20 seconds on Mythic, had to spread out, identify who had wings, click on the person, hit a weak aura macro to vote. The vote would then come up on the side of your screen as to who had the most. You had to DPS that person down, and once you defeated them, they would become a Dreadlord, and you had to do that for 2 different people. And if you DPS the wrong person down, you wipe the raid, and there'd be multiple people who'd get this debuff. And so what would happen is teams would pick the wrong person, DPS the wrong person down, and wipe the raid, or they wouldn't be able to pick anybody because no one could figure out what was going on, or you'd have 3 people with tied votes, and you'd have no idea who to do anything for. But there was no UI support for it at all. And they just assumed that was something you could do.
Literally nothing. It was like one of the most complex raid mechanics I've ever seen in my life. And the UI support was like health bars for the 2 bosses.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like, I mean, yeah, go back and listen to those shows from 2023, I guess that was, or no. I'm sorry, 2021. Yeah, like spring, summer of 2021, where like we're just flabbergasted at how Lords of Dread worked. That's a perfect example of, you can't put a fight like that in the game without baseline giving players more information about how to do it. Like the idea was they're going to make like Among Us was like really hot at the time, right? Or had been recently hot at the time. So it was like, so we're going to do like an Among Us fight inside a WoW raid. Like that's kind of a cool idea, except like all they translated was like what the idea of like the imposter, like the infested player with the Dreadlord, but there was no other. We were just supposed to handle it on voice comms, I guess, was the intention. I mean, really, they knew that people would...
Here's a 20-second window. Go voices. What do you think happens inside voice comms? 7 people all say something or talk to each other at the same time, and you hear nothing. And then you're out of time. Like...
Even on Heroic, it was just... even late in the process, even in Season 4 Heroic, it was like... oh, why does this fight work like this? So, like, that's an example of stuff you just can't do without really strong UI support or this reliance on add-ons. And I would rather see it baked into the UI support in the game. I want Blizzard to give me this information.
Yeah.
But also, I would like to see, like, I guess I think about it in terms of, in a world where Blizzard is giving this information, then go ahead and restrict this kind of computation from add-ons. Don't let add-ons hook into that, fine, but then give me enough time to process the information that you're presenting me. Like there's a give and take there, right? And if we can get there, and if we can have a fight that is maybe not exactly like Lords of Dread, but it's that similar kind of, okay, team, we need to figure this out together. If we do that with an add-on, awesome. That would be really fun. But that fight was not doable without a lot of out-of-game support.
Yeah. There were even teams that had large accessibility issues because there's deaf raid teams that are out there where they literally can't use voice comms to communicate. And so you're like, okay, how is this raid team supposed to do this? They're supposed to just all start typing in chat. Well, you have 20 seconds. So go see how many words you can type in 20 seconds about who has wings on their back. You have to identify who has wings, type it in chat, suss out the votes as to who voted how many, and then DPS down there and still have enough time to DPS down that target, which is going to take time to do. People don't just get one shot because you have all sorts of stuff that procs and goes off and all that kind of stuff that happens too. So we had like people who literally before that phase would happen, you'd press a button that it was a macro of cancel auras that would just cancel like everything, all of the hots on you, like everything, so that you literally were not didn't have healing or anything ticking. Because if you had anything ticking, then you were screwed. So like you had buttons you'd hit to just there was multiple fights that I had to hit a button that tier where I had to remove all of my hots and everything off of my character just in case to make sure my character was DPSable and could be DPSed if needed. So like it was a mess. So yes, I'm glad that they have recognized that is a flaw and a failure and something they need to work on. So we've talked about the restrictions, but what they talk about specifically is that the broader restrictions specifically on what information add-ons have access to about combat events in real time. At the same time, we know that it's not a thing that could just do right now without providing more help on their end, both in terms of UI functionality and the way they're designing fights and how some classes work. So like they've identified the 3 things that they need to do on their end before they even start restricting anything, right? So they need obviously the better UI functionality, they need to design encounters better, and they need to have the way the classes work function better for the encounters they're trying to design. So all of that is stuff that's on their mind. They do talk about adding a DBM style system into the game, just baking that in. They mentioned that that's something they want to put in where there shouldn't be there's no reason why they shouldn't have something that lets you have boss timers and mobility timelines and that kind of stuff like DBM inside of the game. So that's something they can do. And that's not, something that obviously WeCore solves all of the time for everyone. People like using big wigs and DBM and that kind of stuff. So that should be in there. They also mention that building their own version of that, hey, this ability is going to happen in 15 seconds is something they want to do. But it's not just that. They also feel like there should be a way to see a boss timeline. And this is something I wanted to mention because right now Liquid Reminders, which is one of Liquid's proprietary, they built it add-ons. They paid for someone to build it add-ons, whatever it is, however that works. That's out there is a timeline, which is amazing. And so Liquid Reminders is an add-on that I use on a regular basis. And it's something that actually can look at the method raid tools and the Liquid raid tools notes that are out there and add things automatically into Liquid Reminders for you. So if your raid leader is like, hey, I want you to use Tranquility at this point in the fight, it'll actually put a line, a reminder stake inside of your Liquid Reminders for you for that part of the fight. But what it is a window that opens up that on the left-hand side has all of the abilities that the boss does inside of one part. And across the top of this grid is just the time of the fight. And so anytime when the boss is doing something, if the boss is going to cast a certain spell for a certain ability, if the boss is going to do a big phase transition based off of gaining energy, so it always happens at the same time, and that sort of stuff, those are all in that grid. So you can see exactly where stuff is. And I can double click on that grid and go, add a reminder here. I want that reminder to be text-based, or I want it to be voice-based, or I want it to pop up on my screen in a certain way. And I want that reminder to be something that is either a specific spell ability or to focus on something or to move out of something or that something's coming or whatever that is. I can add any of that there. So there have been boss fights this raid tier, actually last raid tier especially, where I had like my defensive cooldowns are in there for when I use Barkskin on my druid, when I'm switching from a single target to an AoE rotation to make sure that I'm pre-priming my starfalls, so they're already rolling by the time ads are spawning, when my major cooldowns are happening, when I need to be interrupting for a particular ad if I have an interrupt assignment, so when that ad spawns, so I can actually be sure I'm suddenly switching my attention to that. I've built all of that into the liquid reminders before, so that I could actually go, hey, this is me pre-planning for a fight, or this is me going to Warcraft logs and going through logs and going, this is when other people have done things. Let me add all of this into my liquid reminders so that when I get in there for even the first time seeing the fight, I have an idea of when I should be pushing certain buttons based off of what someone else has done. So adding something like that in too, which is why I was excited when they mentioned that, seeing a timeline for, boss encounters to see when things are happening, so you don't need an add-on for it. That to me is critical. That's a really helpful tool for everyone to have. And it would be amazing if Blizzard built that into the UI, where they just looked at liquid reminders and added that same level of functionality. Would be incredible for a lot of people, because be able to just plan something out where, like, Jason could go to his raid team and say, all right, everyone pop open your reminders. I want you to go to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. This is when Styx spawns orbs. So you're going to be riding around on these balls of trash at this time and this time and this time. So whenever that happens, you need to turn around and face away from the boss so that you're not going to just roll directly into the boss with the Styx trash ball and waste it. Like, you could literally tell a raid team to do that, and they all go in, they do it. Or even better, this would be my favorite thing ever. Use the current system they have for pins and for talents and for everything else. So Jason just links a thing inside chat, and when you click on it, it pops open your reminders timeline and says, do you want to add this? And you click yes. And it just puts it in, the exact reminder that he wants, into everyone's timeline that they all had. So if he wanted to, he could map out a boss and hit enter and send it to his raid team, and they could click on that button, and it could be everyone moves left. That could literally be the reminder that happens at a certain time in the fight, so that everyone knows they all have to move left at that time of the fight, because maybe they need to shift away from a platform that's going to get destroyed and blown off, and so they have to be sure everyone moves to the left side of the room at that point. Like, that would be amazing as functionality for them to add. So I'm excited that they're looking at doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, so much potential there. And the other thing that's exciting about it, which Ian mentioned in the context of like baking in a damage meter, right? Like, he gave the example that the damage meter is like the most popular add-on across WoW players. It's like, if you have one add-on installed, it's a damage meter basically. And so the idea of like baking that into the UI, having that be an option, and having it be what he described as server authoritative, right? So the server is sending this information to your client, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, somebody was in a different combat phase or somebody was at a range or whatever. Like, the data, you can count on the data being really accurate because the server is feeding it to you. I think of the same thing, applying to what he describes as a boss timeline, what we would think of as, like reminders or DBM, a bigwigs type of stuff, where you don't have to worry about, oh, well, not everybody updated their version and there's been nerfs to this boss, or this changed, or this thing doesn't happen on a consistent timer, so it's within a range or whatever. If you're getting that information from the server, then you know that it's right, like, that the server is going to do this at this timeline point, right? So I think that could be a big benefit too. Like, if Blizzard's providing us this information, it should be more accurate. It should be better. It should be more precise, which should mean that we can make better plans. And then, I mean, your mind just goes to these places of like, if we have these tools and they're from Blizzard, and then they can design fights where we can really utilize them. Like, to me, like the cooperative element of Raid, the camaraderie aspect, the cooperative puzzle solving, the social element, that's the most important thing. That's what brings me back year after year.
Yeah.
And so having fights that can really take advantage of that and let players feel like they're working together to overcome the challenge, like, that's critical to me. And if we can get better experiences at that, because they're not handcuffed by, okay, well, this would be a cool thing, except combat data being passed to add-ons means the players aren't going to actually have to do it. Right. Like, that's kind of where we live now. I feel like for me and most of the people that I've been playing with for a long time, raiding would be so much more fun if we could kind of break those developer handcuffs and they could put stuff in the game that they want us to react to and figure out on the fly ourselves by using comms and using pings and using chat or whatever, versus, okay, everybody update this add-on, update this week aura. When this thing happens, you're going to get a mark over your head. You hit your macro, and then you're going to say this in chat, and then you move to this place that's been predetermined. And, you know, I put the mark on the floor before combat started or whatever. Like, it's not to say that that stuff can never be fun and has never been fun and is never fun, but I feel like there's a more organic layer of fun possible for raiding.
Sure. Here's a modern example, like a current right now example. Sprocket, the lock and stock, right? Mine soaking on that boss, where certain, you know, you have to soak mines, and you have to soak one, let the debuff drop, soak another, let the debuff drop, soak another, let the debuff drop. Particularly on Mythic, this is really important. Your window of time to do that is incredibly tight. You have maybe 3 seconds of spare time inside that window before you start going, oh, there's going to be a mine overlap that happens. It's going to wipe the raid. It might be 5, like top end 5 seconds of maybe leeway that happens there. What was Blizzard's thinking about how players were going to solve who's soaking mines and be able to get that information out to players so that they can have enough time to travel to the mine, which spawn on the other side of the room. That they're on the other side of the room with conveyor belts that most likely are moving against you for trying to get there. So they're not helping you get to these things. And you have to run out of range of all of your healers, get blown up for a substantial amount of damage, and then get back to the raid without messing up by running over another one of the many mechanics that are happening. And you have to do that for 4 people every time mines come up. How was it that you're supposed to communicate that? Like, without having a weak aura happening that tells people to go to a certain marker or whatever it is that's going on. Like, without having that, right? There's no way you could communicate in those even 3 to 5 seconds of leeway time 4 names, which mines they need to go to, and how that's going to work. There's no way that you could do that in that window of time.
Right.
So,
and so you think about like where it could go, and it's like, well, you can tweak the knobs, right? You could have fewer mines. You have more time to react to them. Stuff like that starts becoming more of a possibility because right now they have to funnel that challenge into do it as fast and efficiently as superhumanly possible because you're using these weak auras, you're using these add-ons, you're using all of these tools. If we can't use those tools, then if the give and take is okay, you get more baseline information on the screen, and you know, Ian talked about the concept of affordance. You know, and like, in other words, how much a mechanic is called out or how long it takes to react to should be proportional to how dangerous or how important it is. So, you know, I think you have these dials that can turn, and like you could do a fight like Styx that is still essentially the same fight, but it could feel more fun to do because you have more leeway to do it because you can't lean on an add-on to handle all the assignment for you.
Yeah, you could have it be 2 mines on your side of the room with the same amount of time, and suddenly you do have enough time to go, you and you break first this mine. And you're like, oh, okay, great. That's fine. You could do that every time that comes up. Totally solved on voice comms, no problem at all. People would have time to parse it and figure out what's going on with it. You wouldn't need an add-on to solve that for you at all. Like that, and people wouldn't make one. They wouldn't need it. They wouldn't need to run it. But the issue is, you know, as they've talked about, the add-ons have put them in a position where they've tried to create these twitchy kind of situations where, like, not only is it those 2 mines are across the room, now the people who are assigned to them have to be a mage or a druid or an evoker, something that can cross like 60 yards of space in less than 2 or 3 seconds because they need to get to that first mine now. And the second mine has to go 2 seconds after that. Then the third and the fourth that are closer. So like, I'm with you. Like I'm excited for a raid scene where there's enough time to parse what's happening to be able to have that be the reaction, as opposed to being like, oh, no, I have to have a weak aura that pops up on my screen with a map and has circles of a red circle of which mine is mine and it has a thing over my head that's telling me go blue, and there's a blue marker over there, and I have to book it from here to there, and like I have to understand that information and book it from here to there in a very brief period of time, and actually figure that out and make that happen. And there were obviously multiple wipes for every team doing sticks where someone just wasn't able to parse that information fast enough and didn't get to their mind fast enough. Like they saw go to red X and they're like, well, where is red X? And they didn't recognize the map, or they didn't see it somewhere, or the raid leader switched markers in some way and didn't put them down right at the start of the whole thing. So they have to then, because of the add-on, switch it back. Like that goes back into the typo situation that we talked about earlier. So to me, it's just really important that we're seeing them move away from that sort of stuff, because I think that's going to help a lot. The quote for me in here, the goal is to not make it easier. The goal is to make it less complex. That is literally the objective that they're trying to do here. And there's a key distinction there that they want to make. So they want World of Warcraft to be as approachable as possible, but they also love the skill ceiling in the game, and as incredibly high as it is, that allows for tons of different ways of self-expression and accomplishment inside the game. The goal is to make it easier. The goal is not to make it easier. It's to make it less complex. So I'm hoping that that's what we see going forward from a lot of this. There's a few more things in here we want to touch on before we move on from Ian's interview, which was he gets in here and says that not doing stuff sufficient, that they're not doing a sufficiently good job of telegraphing the importance of certain mechanics and the impact and players need to use external solutions for them. That's something Jason talked about just a little while ago of, hey, if this thing's really important, then we should do a better job of telegraphing that to players. The note that he sort of goes into here is that this isn't just for Raid, this is also for Mythic Plus. So this is like flagging a mob that casts in Mythic Plus as a lethal cast, as a high priority interrupt, right? Right now, I use Plater. Plater does this for me. Inside Plater, I can even change it and prioritize other things, where there's spells that cast that are blue and there's spells that cast that are pink. If it's a pink spell casting, that spell has to be dealt with. That is a critically important spell for me. It stands out as a bright pink bar. I know I can find it anywhere, that is the thing that needs to get interrupted, or that's the thing that I need to pay attention to. And, they're talking about making sure that when you see 3 casters casting, that is a distinguishable thing for players, because players are using those tools already. So they want to bridge that gap for making sure that people aren't having to use these add-ons to solve those problems for them, and they're building it in. So I'll read these last 2 quotes from him, and then we'll move on from this. And Jason, obviously, you can add in feedback that you have at the end of this too. And the reality is, if you couldn't use weak auras, that mechanic would be designed or tuned differently. We would have ended up nerfing it right away, or designing it differently over the course of even just PTR testing. And so that's like any future design in this space will have to be built from the ground up with that in mind. And also the goal is anything that's cosmetic should be completely fair game. All informational stuff that's out of combat, like your RP add-ons, your help with tracking quests and things, your help with professions, your tracking resource nodes and gathering nodes, you name it, a bunch of accessibility add-ons, all of those, there's nothing harmful whatsoever about them. They're not going to touch them at all. That's not something you have to worry about. So just wrapping that up with like, hey, the goal is that things should be more accessible going forward for players. The encounters should be designed with UI, character class, and boss design in consideration going forward for all these encounters. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that ends up resulting in. I'm curious whether or not it's going to even happen for next raid tier, or whether this is something that's way down the line.
I don't think this is even next expansion, man.
Yeah,
I think this is because it's going to take, you're chipping away at years and years and years of debt here, right? Like,
yeah, I just mean if they've already looked at bosses for next raid tier and they've gone, we should back these things off a bit, right? I'm wondering if that's already
done. I mean, I think that would be nice, even if it's stuff like weak auras can get at now. Like, I feel like if you make a fight that doesn't even if it's complex, but it doesn't require a lot of outside of game information, that like people, a team like mine would probably be happy to just try to wing it. We got boss timers and we're good to go. Like, we'll figure out a strat for heroic at least.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. But I mean, overall, I like the end goal here. I do think it's going to result in the game being more fun to play. I know it's scary for people to think about because all we can think about is the way that we've been playing the game. And if you think about add-ons not having access to the kind of in-combat information that they have right now, you go, well, how does any of this work? So what I liked about the stuff Ian was saying was he took a lot of accountability, on the team's behalf of like, this is stuff that hasn't been good enough, and we haven't done historically a good enough job of communicating this stuff to players. And so he's also taking on a lot of responsibility to say, we're going to build all of this into the game and that we're going to make it accurate and we're going to make it usable and we're going to make it flexible. This is a big commitment to overhauling a lot of these elements of the game's UI, and also like encounter design, class design. Encounter design and class design always go hand in hand, as we talk about a lot. It's a big commitment to players, I feel like, is what is being made here, and it's a really clear statement of accountability that like the reason why a lot of these add-ons exist in the first place is because they weren't doing a good enough job of communicating this information in game. So I think it's good, and I hope we end up where we need to be for them to be able to, cut off that add-on access and go, here, you guys can figure this out with the tools that we're giving you. I want to live in that world, but it's 100% on them to make it work and to make it comparable to what we're used to. Like, if my team can't go in and clear heroic AOTC within a few weeks because we can't use these tools anymore, then I feel like the initiative is not complete yet, right? Like, we're not, I have a very long running team with, I have players that have been playing with since Cataclysm, since Mists of Pandaria, and we've always kind of been around that same level. If our experience drastically changes, it means that the initiative has failed for now, right? Like, nothing is ever permanent in WoW, but I want to get to where Ian says he's going to take us. It's going to be a lot of work. You're still going to have the potential for failure. It doesn't mean like, oh, you just beat all the bosses now because that's not what it means. It means that you're not managing add-ons and managing weak auras and managing this meta level of the fight in order to succeed. You're playing the game, you're engaged in the fight, you win or lose based on the merits of that. That sounds great to me.
What I wanted to mention was you talked maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago about a friend of yours who you hadn't raided with in a long time, who came back to the game, experienced a raid, and then went, this isn't for me anymore. I don't know what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, he immediately stopped playing it. He was enjoying War Within, came back for a few weeks. He was like, hey, man, I want to check out a raid. I was like, all right, cool. Come with us. We went and did Palace, when it was totally on farm. Took him all the way through all the bosses, and he was like shell-shocked at the end of it. And then I think he stopped logging in very shortly after that experience.
Yep. And that to me just speaks volumes to how much the game has changed over the years for people who are experiencing the older content versus the current content, and the design philosophy shift that's taken place that's really put people into a situation now where it's like, yeah, they're designing encounters now that focus on having to be twitchy and dodge stuff and move and need all these add-ons and tons of stuff's happening on your screen. There's so much information being thrown at you versus where things used to be. And like, man, I remember raiding in Mists of Pandaria, and I didn't have anything like that going on my screen. Like, I used like a DBM back then or a Bigwigs back then, and that was it. I would sort of customize it out the way I needed it. And, I had like bartender for my bars, and I used Titan panel for the bottom of my screen for tracking like my durability and, what time it was and how much gold I had or something. Like, that was like the majority of my add-ons. I had, a damage meter back then, sure, but I wasn't using weak auras with like custom built scripts to make sure that, when I had to kick turtle shells on Tortos, that like I was lined up inside the correct path, Luke Skywalker firing, into the Death Star kind of situation, UI screen set up to be able to kick a turtle shell. Like, that's not what the stuff was designed around. That's not, how stuff needs to happen. I had to throw a Star Wars reference in. It's May the 4th, so whatever. So it's one of those things where like it made sense to me to bring that up of your friend who experienced this and came back and was like, this is too much. I'm out. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what Ian obviously has in store for us going forward. And the only thing I can think in the back of my head is like, Ian, I hope this means you're sticking around for another 10 years of Blizzard, man. Like, I hope you're not going anywhere anytime soon. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was good to hear from him again.
Yep.
I mean, like, because I feel like his media presence has been diminished intentionally a lot over the last couple of years. We used to get the monthlies with him and Josh, right? And it was like it was like write-in questions. So it would start off really good, and then it started getting kind of repetitive over the years. But still, it was nice to have that kind of primary source for here's what's coming, here's where we think we're going. Here's what we think or like or dislike about any of these issues. Yeah, that was awesome. I would like to hear from him more. I think just like the general vibe was that like he was probably going to be moving on. I think he's now probably been the game director longer than anybody. I think he surpassed Tom Chilton at this point. Yeah. Or he's very close to, like he will this year or something if my math is off. And, we saw like Morgan and Jeremy get these, assistant game director titles and stuff. And it's like, oh, well, after this next one ships, he's probably going to be along with something else and they'll bump up Morgan or Jeremy or whatever. And that hasn't happened yet. I mean, you can say, obviously, like Ian's been the subject of some memes and stuff over the years. I think overall his tenure in the big chair has been pretty successful. I think there's obviously been some challenges, maybe some of the worst eras of the game, but also some of the best. And that with an organic kind of like living, breathing thing like WoW is, I think it's kind of inevitable that when you're steering a ship for so long that you have good and bad eras. But he's obviously always been really passionate about the game and about players' experiences with it. And I think they're in an era now where more than ever they've like listened to player feedback and incorporated it into design philosophy and have tried to present a more broadly appealing game than ever. Like all the time they're trying to add new stuff into the game that presents something cool for different kinds of players. Look at housing coming in, right? Like that's another example of it, I think, too. And so, my big hope is that, the end goal of the system is realized and that we can have raids that are fun and engaging and feel like a co-op problem that you're solving with your buddies with swords and axes and magic spells, right? That, and it just feels really cool to unpack that together, and that the challenge is in more so working together versus everyone is managing their own little suite of add-ons, and that is how they interact with the boss fight. Because I do feel like it kind of feels like that, now. So I hope they get there sooner than later. And I guess the one thing that I really believe is that if it ends up in not a great place, that they're not going to stop, right? Like they'll keep, because we've seen it so much with edit mode and with other changes that they've made lately, where they just keep iterating, they keep chipping away at this stuff. It's not going to be tomorrow, it's not going to be next week, but it's cool to think of like that end state, and maybe in a couple more expansions or something, it could really be. Again, like it's not like, oh, well, it's easy now because you don't have to manage the add-ons. It's streamlined. You're not thinking about that layer of it. You're thinking about the fight itself, and that's where I want to be. Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up this episode with a chat about the May trading post, because it is May, and so we're just going to get this in here real quick. So we're going to be close to 3 hours on this thing, I think, but we'll see. Anyways, May trading post is out. There is a spring harvest hog as the big mount that you can buy right now, where you ride on the back of a hedgehog by holding onto a leaf that's resting there with cute little fruit baskets on either side. It is adorable. It makes all sorts of cute noises when you do the mount special. So keep that in mind. If you're someone who's looking for the harvest hog, it is out and about. There is
Your character attachment is really weird, though.
It is.
Unfortunately. At least mine is. I looked at it on my main, who is a female night elf, and I was like, oh, something's wrong there. So, I don't know. Your results may vary.
A boomkin sits pretty well. It's a pretty big model. It seems to do okay.
Okay, good. Yeah.
There's also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles callbacks in all of this trading post. So there's all sorts of different masks with the obviously iconic colors for your head if you want to dress up like a Ninja Turtle. There's also a heroic half shell back piece that is just a turtle shell back piece. They added in the weapons. There's scythes and katanas and nunchucks that actually are work like nunchucks, which are pretty cool. So there's lots of stuff you can play around with as far as Ninja Turtles go. There is some really cool weapon appearances out there right now that I do not have enough tender this month for all of it. There's also the Swift Fox and the Swift Raccoon. I think is the other one, attire, where it's like a little like cute raccoon hat with sort of like a drape that goes over your shoulders, and then the same thing with a fox one. For those two things, they're out there. And then there's the monthly reward, which is Weechi, which is a little puppo, a little dog that you can actually take to barber grooming stations in Orgrimmar and Stormwind and customize the appearance of your Weechi and get hats for your Weechi pet. So it's one of those pets where I feel like, you mentioned Jeremy earlier. Jeremy's like, I need like 17 of these different dogs. And they went, okay, well, this is what we'll do. We'll give you one dog, but we'll let you actually go and dress it up how you want to dress it up. And so they've added grooming stations for this puppo, and you can take it and get it all groomed and everything else. So pretty cool month. Certainly worthwhile checking out what's in there. And I definitely do not have enough tender to spend on the amount of stuff that I want from this month.
Yeah, this is a good month. I think this is one of the coolest bonus rewards they've done. A customizable pet, man. If Jeremy wasn't like directly involved in this, I'm sure he was so happy when they presented it to him. Like,
absolutely.
here's what we're thinking. Like just different cost. Like it's one pet, but you can put all different costumes on it and stuff. That's really cool. There's all kinds of the weapons are like real Drust looking, which is cool and kind of a unique thing for WoW. It hasn't appeared too much, and that was always such a tantalizing part of like BFA. And there was some in Shadowlands, and I'm always waiting for more Drust stuff. So we got some really Drust theme looking weapons this month and as well. There's a whole bunch of mounts on offer this month. There's something for everybody this month for sure. I never did the meta achievement for Dragonflight to get Typhon, so I might buy the Bakar just because I don't have like a dog model mount that looks like that. So it's not even really that expensive for a mount in terms of tender either. So that's pretty cool. I don't need it to be the exact thing as Typhon. Just to get that silhouette is pretty cool. Good month. I mean, we're seeing some returning stuff that's pretty like springtime themed as well, and so good mix of new stuff, returning stuff, a couple different flavors. I mean, the Ninja Turtle stuff is really out of left field, but it's fun, and it's also not the only thing on the post this month. So I think that's a big win. Some people are really into it. I don't know if I'm really going to get any of it. I might get the turtle shell back just because it's so goofy, like it's so unique.
I got the nunchucks. I had to get the nunchucks, man. Like
they're cool.
I love things that have physics and can move around like that. And I'm like, at some point down the line, I'm gonna want to play a monk who's using nunchucks to beat something up. It's just gonna be cool, man. You got to do it.
Yeah, true. They're like one-handed maces that are like to use that like flail physics that we saw come in with Legion originally. And they still haven't really done a lot of flails, but yeah, they look cool. So yeah, a lot of good stuff this month. I'm like, I mean, it's only the 4th as we're talking now. I'm like halfway up the bar already, and I've just been kind of dinking around doing delves and world quests and nightfall. So I'll get my Weechi pretty soon here, and then I'll figure out what I'm buying. But good month. It's been a couple months of like I don't really care about any of this stuff. Like whatever, I'll take it. Thanks. It was free with my subscription, but. There's some cool variety this month for sure, and awesome bonus reward in my opinion. I think one of the coolest things they've done.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think it's something that they sort of excelled at for this month. So pretty happy with that. All right, man, oh man. If you want to contact the show, you can do that over at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter, or join our Discord, or all sorts of stuff like that. We have plenty of ways of reaching out and contacting the show. Recently changed our store. That's now located over at Dashery. So it's thestartingzone.dashery. So DASHERY.com is where that lives. And I, of course, want to thank our patrons. I'm going to give a special shout out today to Arajian, Bradley, James, Garrett, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, and Shorel. Thank you so much for all that you give towards supporting the show, as well as all of our patrons, past and present. And hopefully future, for those people just, thinking about hopping in down the line. You can find our Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. You guys are amazing. You help us create this content on a regular basis. You keep us on schedule. You keep the lights on. You keep the episodes posted and hosted and all the archives online. So thank you so much. We appreciate all of our patrons for what they give.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, patrons. We couldn't do it without you. It's been huge over the many years of us doing the show and running the campaign. And yeah, if you like what we've been doing lately, you can thank a patron because we couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to wrap up episode 682 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. And Jason, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Best place to find me, you can find me on socials like Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm at Shieldwald over on Twitter, at jlucas.bsky.social over on Blue Sky. Kind of mostly just post stuff on Blue Sky when I do post stuff, but I do check both sites. So come say hi over there. Video channels are twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I still haven't really been back to regularly streaming, but they are there. I do stream intermittently sometimes. I have nothing to commit to at this point. I don't know if I'll be streaming this week or what, but if I feel like throwing the stream on, you will find it over there.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at Spencer HD. You can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, and you can find me on twitch.tv/Spencer HD or youtube.com/@Spencer HD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.